Well, look, let's see how it goes. Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Do you know YouTube is doing this thing for me where right now it's saying live streaming isn't available right now, and this is like
Nice chatting shite.
it's talking shite to me. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
YouTube talking shite again. It did.
Like YouTube tried to keep us down.
YouTube, the man trying to keep us down. Would you believe it? The fucker. Come here to me. I think we might be
They'll
live now.
never do that.
I
We're
know.
live now.
I think we might be live now, but for fuck's sake.
Yeah, we've only gone.
YouTube was there for about 10 seconds. Like, sorry, mate, live streaming isn't available right now. You're fucked. And
It's very unlike YouTube and Google.
Very unlike.
The comments, isn't it? I mean, very out of character. Never would have expected it.
Oh, Christ. How are you getting on to everybody in the chat? Good to see us there. Apologies for the. Actually, we're not that late. I don't even know why we're apologizing.
5 minutes, come on.
We're
We're early.
fairly early, to be honest.
Yeah,
When
come
people
on.
click onto the stream, they're usually expecting about 15 minutes of nonsense at start. So, actually, yeah, I'd say
Just
we're.
be thankful.
They should be thanking us. Comments in the chat, please send your thanks there whenever I'm taking the piss.
I'll be happy to receive them as well.
We'll be happy to receive them, absolutely. Harry's getting on, everybody. I see a few people in the chat there. I see Alcesaurus, I can't really pronounce that name. I can't pronounce any of these names. Jesus, Marhantium channel, Antifosaurus.
Talking.
That's the vodka talking. Yeah, the vodka's kicking in already, comrades. I hope you have a drink in hand. I was just saying that to comrades Josh over here. Excuse me, comrade Swan over here. I was just saying.
Please call me Josh. It's fine.
Do you prefer Josh? Okay. We're all right. Well, comrade Josh and I were just saying.
Teacher.
Well, you need to have a drink in hand to appreciate the depth and sincerity of this stream here today, and especially.
Serious.
Well, listen. In order to tolerate our drunken arses for a couple, 2-3 hours, whatever it might be, you're probably going to need to be fairly on the sauce. We'll say. How are you, Googly Moogly, Will Turner, Dyslexic Communist, CA, Emma, Dave? How are you getting on? Matthew Jackson, Berrimans. Who else can I see there? Biggie Smalls, Jessidiah, Redruvic. Cornelius, Libya, Jim. I can't pronounce your name, comrade, but you know who you are. Gaddafi picture. Comrade Roman. Gaddafi gang rise up. Who else have we got? Absolutely. All right, fantastic stuff. Come here to me. Everybody in the chat, everybody there who's watching right now, we've got a fantastic stream lined up for you. We've got the one, the only comrade, Socialist Swann.
Yeah, you're too kind, comrade. You're too kind.
Comrade, would
Give
you?
a shout out as well to the mod union as well. Keep it going. Look after the front line as well, I'm gone.
This is it exactly. Yeah, I mean they need to step in where we have fallen at the moment.
Exactly.
But community, would you like to
By the class struggle.
level it up? Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself to anybody who has had the misfortune of not encountering you so far
I'll
on
be very
YouTube?
happy to introduce myself. So, obviously, I'm Socialist Swann. Well, just call me Josh, please. We'll keep it casual here. I'm a British Marxist-Leninist. I'm in the Communist Party of Britain. And I make socialist YouTube videos about history, mainly about the GDR so far. I've got a running series called Socialism in the GDR, looking at different aspects of life in the country. And I've also branched into other areas as well. So I did a recent video about the Fenians in Ireland, which your man Paul Morin also very happily voiced the speech for me. So cheers for that. And I'm also going to be looking at some more local history, so like Leeds anti-fascism, the Battle of Holbeck Moor, where we gave Mosley a nice old scar under his eye, which he never forgot about. So I'm looking forward to talking about that as well.
Community, thank you very much, comrade. That was a lovely introduction. Now, I'm afraid that the sound levels, do you know, this second thing that Streamlabs OBS does to me, where the sound levels are perfect beforehand, they're perfect for the last stream, for 10 streams before that, and then I get live. The second we go live to the good people, it messes everything up. So I just want to double check there. It says the comrades in the chat are saying that it's better now. I'm hoping.
Okay, so
Do you want to just maybe? Okay, people are saying perfect levels now. Happy days.
Lovely.
Okay, great. Community, do you want to just quickly? Sorry, I'm sure some of the comments caught maybe the end of that there. Do you want to just quickly? Sorry, we have to rewind a little bit. Do you want to maybe just do that again? Introduce yourself. I'm so sorry.
it's fine.
Streamlabs OBS.
No, Bob. Yeah, so obviously, I'm Socialist Swann. I'm a British Marxist-Leninist video history, and look like now socialism and the GDR aspects of it more in depth tonight. And I'm also looking at Ireland as well, the history of Ireland, and also much more local history, future specifically to do with your the anti-fascist and communist movement in my local area. So that's what I've got going on.
That's the good shit right there. Fantastic stuff. And I appreciate the rewind as well. It's very, very helpful. So,
No bother.
come here to me, comrade. Are you okay with taking a few questions and answers throughout the stream? It was pretty fun there the last day when we were doing questions.
Yeah, sound.
I fallen into the trap.
Yeah.
I fall into the trap of only doing questions and answers at the end of the stream. But at the end of the stream, you're usually too tired. You're too tired anyway. You're just like, jeez, we've been doing this for 3 hours.
Yeah, and that by the end of it. I don't want to do it. You Gopnik and be asleep by it, so we'll keep him in the middle.
Don't tell you Gopnik anybody. I hope you Gopnik isn't watching. Actually, no, I hope he is watching.
I just called him out.
You've been challenged. You've been challenged.
That's it. I want to outdrink him now. I mean, I can't handle it, but it might be fun.
Well, we're probably gonna have to do like a 3-way stream at some stage. 3-way piss up stream.
Oh, that'll be class.
At some stage, we're gonna have to make that happen. All right, class, fantastic stuff. So. Conrad, tell us what brought you to YouTube. Why did you start your channel?
I saw a thing they're called Vicky. I think they've actually the platform for a little bit now. But they did a video just talking about how to start a leftist YouTube channel and like why you should do it as well. And I guess that kind of gave me the early spark of just like, I mean, I've been obviously reading a lot about socialist countries and stuff, and I've been developing myself as a communist as well. And I thought, well, the way to learn is to teach, and also people can teach me back as well. It'll be a kind of 2-way system. So that's one of the main things that kind of inspired me to begin with. But then seeing your channel, the other tanky tubers out there.
Tanky tubers.
I thought I may as well throw my hat into the ring and see what can happen. I mean, I basically nicked. Look at my videos, stock footage in the background, reading over it and that, but I'm sure I won't mind.
A proud tradition of stock footage and talking about communism on YouTube.
Definitely it's the way.
Standing on the shoulders of giants like Hakeem and the boys.
God, could you imagine one day getting up to Hakeem's level?
Oh no, I can't even imagine. Hakeem's so fucking well read and such a humble bastard as well. Such a kind, friendly fella.
No, he's lovely.
Such a nice guy, genuinely. We were having connection difficulties when he was on the stream and all, and I'd have to get him to like repeat what he was saying over and over and over. I don't know how he tolerated it, but he did.
Yeah, he stayed really calm throughout it all as well. Like, honestly, I don't know. I'm Stalin trying to interview. I quite like Stalin, you see. So hopefully,
I'd say Stalin would be nice to do as a result of that.
Well, I hope so.
Although, come here to me. I see that little picture that you have there, and I'm using the little picture, and I noticed that Swan is intruding on Comrade Stalin's facade.
No, I mean, it's kind of like, right. It's obviously Stalin. If his spirit animal would have been a swan, so actually, it's the truest form of himself. Actually, that's him as he would want it to be seen.
You've
so
leveled him up.
I think he should be happy. Yeah.
This is Stalin at Charizard level.
Exactly. That's his final evolution.
What's he reached level 35 or something like that? Yeah. Class.
That's after several 5-year plans.
He's looking well. I like the blue hat as well. It's very good. And come here, do you want to talk a little bit about your political tendency and your political development over the years? I know you mentioned that you're doing these videos, and so as a way of helping you to learn as well, which I think is useful. I mean, because if you really want to learn a subject, the best thing you can do is try teach it, because it'll expose the gaps in your knowledge. And
100%.
It'll force you to do better. So it is a really good way. But you want to talk a little bit about your political development? I don't know how much you want to get into the history and past there, because I know that you and I could both go into a full fucking rant.
Oh, easily.
About some shared history.
Oh, yeah. Very similar there. No, I'll try to keep it as non-sectarian as I can, I suppose.
We'll keep it friendly.
Yeah, we'll keep it nice for the trust
for now.
I love you all, obviously.
Kind there.
Yeah. So
Trotsky, good fan of the show.
Oh yeah. He's been supporting the Patreon as well. Good on him.
Like 99% of my Patreon support is just from Leon Trotsky. This was.
Oh, 100%. He's been living like a king in Mexico, hasn't he? So he must have something going for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about time he shared that wealth. I'm a comrade. I'll grab that. No, I'll talk about myself then. I'll boost my ego a little bit.
Please.
So yeah, I first of all came to leftist ideas after the 2017 British election, where obviously Corbyn was flying high at the time, and a lot of I kind of got caught up in that kind of student wave of supporting Corbyn and the Labour Party at the time. With the local Labour Party, got really disillusioned in it. It was very kind of bureaucratic, very full of like kind of old Blairites as well in my area. So it was a bit less than ideal, I'd say that. So I was kind of looking as well elsewhere. I started reading the likes of like Marx and mainly Lenin, especially State and Revolution. I think the first time you read that changes your worldview. Like you just have this massive eureka moment. It's like, shit, capitalism bad. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And the only way we could fix that is a dictatorship of the proletariat. Brilliant, I'm on board.
100%.
So I went to a May Day back in 2018, and the first party I stumbled across was a certain Socialist Workers Party. I'm not going to talk about them too much. But no, so I got involved with them for that. I got heavily involved with it. Kind of got quite high up as well, I guess. And then I just had this moment. I was just like, shit, maybe it's bad. Like,
oh shit,
maybe everything I ever thought was wrong. Yeah. And funny enough, I was actually reading about the GDR that first started that process, because I took up a module at uni about the GDR, and I'm sat there, you know, like one of the only northern working class people in the room. Yeah. They're all Londoners, middle class, and socialism. And I was like, well, I'm not liking this. I'm a trot, but I'm still not liking the language you're using. So I'm going to read about it, and I'm going to, you know, just destroy them in the free marketplace of ideas. I started reading about the GDR, being like, yeah, okay, maybe Marx and Leninism good. Unfortunately, I never got to debate with these Southerners because obviously the pandemic happened. So and that all got cancelled. But during the lockdown, I just started reading much more about it, looking into the local Communist Party and what was going on there. Since, you know, I've joined now, I'm a full member. And I'm obviously still learning day by day. Yeah, I mean, I was actually watching your stream with Dave from Radical Reflections.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know, I was asking him about the YCL, and he said, just do it. So I guess thank you for that. That stream there obviously helped a lot. And yeah, obviously I'm still learning day by day. I'm probably going to get bits and pieces wrong during the night as well.
Oh, of course.
Again, we're all here to learn together. So, you know, and especially when the pints are flowing as well.
Yeah, no, and you learn a lot as well. The particular audience who watch these streams, they're friendly, unless you start talking about either
they're all lovely, unless
you start talking about China or you start talking about Vosh or Caleb Mappin, in which case we just need to fucking
I am a very happy upholder of the ban. I'm a very happy upholder of the ban on China discourse.
Those three topics.
No China discourse.
We're not doing it.
It's not happening. Anyone talks about China in this chat, gulag, go. Sorry,
gulag.
That's it.
It's 600 second gulag as the YouTube chat permits, I suppose.
As the mod starts piling onto you as well, that's when it gets worse. What she sent?
Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic. And come here, do you know, I was just thinking there. It's very similar. It was very similar. Your experience of political development was very similar to my own, and it's quite interesting to me because when you sort of saw the limits with liberalism and social democracy and all these things and started to really challenge capitalism, it strikes me that you didn't mention anything about anarchism or anything like that.
No, I never did.
That's quite that's an interesting topic, and I think it's probably an interesting topic for a lot of people online, because a lot of people online, when it's like, especially people like online, people from like the United States and stuff like that, and maybe people from France and other parts, other like places in Europe and stuff like that, and a lot of them go through a stage sort of between liberalism and Marxism or Marxism-Leninism, of anarchism. Whereas it seems to me that in Ireland, in the UK, that a lot of people, that sort of anarchist phase is generally, it's substituted for a Trotskyist phase.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, no, you kind of have this. I guess you do go through this phase where you still accept a lot of Western media's lies about socialist countries, especially on Stalin, the Soviet Union, China, the GDR, all these kind of places. You first starting to question the system, and you know, you have these voices that are there willing to say, yeah, we hate capitalism, we want socialism, but we don't want Stalin. That's one of the first things they say, more or less. And that, obviously that's very enticing for young people who obviously haven't rings. You know, and I guess they are quite helpful for you know, attacking capitalism and having good critiques of it. But then you kind of hit that point towards the end where you're like, well, it's all well and good having this ideology, but practical applications, where is Trotskyism being tried and where has it succeeded? And you'll find that this again. I love Trotskyists, obviously. Fail to understand how politics, you can't just have them in your head. You have to adapt to the material conditions of the places that you're living in. 1917 Russia anymore.
Yep.
So we have to adapt to where we are now. And I think that's something that's really good about the Communist Party of Britain, that it has its Britain's road to socialism, where it are right now, and how we get out of it. Good plan, I think, and I recommend any British comrades to please give that a read. But yeah, I guess anarchism, because there was never an anarchist space in Britain, and like you were saying, Ireland and Britain, it seems that it's monopolised that first stage to being a Stalin stan. But never really flirted with it. The only time I saw it, so there we go.
It just doesn't. There's no presence here. There's very few. You'll see one or two. You obviously see like fucking people wearing like anarchist T-shirts and that around, but you don't see like serious like militant anarchist movements or syndicalist movements or anything like that. And I don't know how it is where you are, but like in Dublin, there's like even the trade union, the syndicalist movement, and so on. It's basically non-existent, and it hasn't been since the 1990 Industrial Relations Act that came in and completely just basically castrated it. Can't basically do anything of any substance now in terms of building up a.
You can't have political strikes or anything, or you can't even have proper strikes here now or anything like that. What they've been doing recently. I mean, the British government legally. They did it before anyway, but they can now legally infiltrate trade unions and leftist organisations, and they're legally allowed to commit murder and sexual assault.
Fucking hell.
Which is fucking disgusting.
I mean, British Empire, as an Irishman, I shouldn't be too surprised.
Well, I mean, obviously not surprised, I feel like that might be a lot of a wake-up call for those that aren't familiar with Irish history, or any history of the British Empire.
But
like, us Marxist-Leninists, and those of us that are familiar with the history of Britain aren't surprised at all. It's just the fact they made it legal now.
They just basically it was always pretty much legal de facto, but now it's just formalised, I suppose.
Yeah, and the fact that Labour didn't even do a token opposition against it, they just stood aside. Like, what's that?
What's that about? What's that about, indeed? All right. Okay.
It's almost like the Labour Party isn't communist.
Wait a minute, hang on. I heard Jeremy Corbyn.
Sorry, that's a hot take, mate. I know, but I hate to break it to you. Don't cancel me now.
I heard Jeremy Corbyn was a Stalinist. I don't know what you're talking about, but anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw what Dave Allen said. It must be true.
All right, okay, listen, come here to me. Good stuff. Thank you very much, comrade. I really appreciate that.
No bother.
Lovely introduction and a bit of history about your life and stuff like that. But let's get down to the meat of the discussion today.
The business.
Let's get down to the business. Let's get down. We're 22 minutes in. We've been messing around.
Already?
Would you believe? The time flies, doesn't it?
That shocked me.
I know. Come here to me. Let's get started. Let's jump in. Today we're going to be talking about the GDR, the German Democratic Republic. We're going to be talking about the entirety of it, focusing particularly on democracy and work in the GDR. As I'm sure most of you know, Comrade Swann has 2 videos addressing each of these subjects individually, and they're excellent. Go check them out if you haven't already. But yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that today. We're gonna dive into it, take some of the stuff apart, and we're gonna have a conversation about these things. And I'm sure that with the participation of yourself, of myself, of the people in the chat who are watching right now, we're going to probably all gain quite a lot from this conversation. And anybody who has questions, just if you're in the chat, just make sure to type @PaulMoran, and then I'll see the question. I'll know that's for ourselves, and we'll be able to address it as we're going along. Okay. Let's do it. Let's jump in. Yeah, you wanted to.
First of all, I'm doing. I'm going to do the history kind of in sections, looking at key events. Maybe doing like a little bit of discussion, branching off that. So if you want, I can stop at the end of these kind of events, and we can have like a little bit of a Q&A. Like again, I'm kind of simplifying the history here. We've got 50 years to get through.
It's fairly hard to get through 50 years within the space of a fucking couple hour stream. So
100%, yeah. So
we're gonna miss some stuff.
If you want, just tell me some questions whenever it's relevant, and I can answer happily. So.
Yeah, we can take it apart as we're going along and stuff like that. So yeah, brilliant.
Class.
Come here, let's go ahead. Let's jump into it. We'll take it apart now, bit by bit. So here's the big one, comrades. I'm asking you now to do us a big favor. So let's say we're at ground zero. There's people in the chat. There's myself, who knows fucking nothing about the subject at all.
We can change that.
Well, let's educate me, please. Conrad, please give us an overview of the major events of the German Democratic Republic from its formation in 1949 to its dissolution in 1990.
Lovely. Well, first of all, to understand the GDR, we kind of have to see where it actually came from as well, because everything is marred by the material conditions of society. You have to base it on what was actually there beforehand. And obviously, the region of Eastern Germany was never as industrially developed as the West. It was always much more rural. You had these kind of centres of industry inside Berlin and Saxony in the south. But the majority of the country was quite rural, and its economy always depended on trading food with the West to feed the industry over there. So, and there's very few kind of natural resources as well in the east of Germany. The only ones they really had in abundance were like brown coal, which is very bad for the environment, and obviously you try not to use that if you can, and uranium. So they didn't have massive amount of good coal or oil or anything like this. It was quite a poor kind of area. And obviously Germany was never meant to be divided as well. It was always, since the 1870, it was a unified country, and that's how the economy was. And then obviously you come to 1945 was a big event that just ended. You might have heard of it. It was the Second World War. So East Germany was absolutely ravaged by the war. 2/3 of all houses in the area were actually destroyed by the war, because this is where you had the most fierce resistance against the Red Army, where they'd all been almost indoctrinated in a way to hate Bolshevism and to hate communism. So a lot of them fought to the deaths there as well. You had, women, young children, old men, all fighting for Hitler, and obviously that destroyed the region. So you have this almost ruined country, which has now got to build socialism. And it also had quite a harsh, it paid 98% of all of Germany's reparations to the USSR. West Germany only paid 2% of the reparations. And also any kind of remaining industry that was there as well was also sent to the USSR to try and rebuild their economy, because obviously they were destroyed as well. The Nazi invasion wasn't nice. So
that's absolutely, and that's it's really interesting that that East Germany had to pay the reparations, and meanwhile in the West they're getting they're getting the benefits of the Marshall Plan coming in from the US to build up the rest of Europe and create this sort of counter-hegemonic counter-socialist, anti-socialist, anti-communist bloc in towards the West, and they didn't get any of those benefits. So they were really starting off
they didn't get anything,
at a much lower footing than the West was. And unfortunately, people will be like, "Oh, well, look how poor East Germany was." That's like one of the first things that you'll hear people saying is like, "Look,"
all the time,
and it's totally unfair. They're just starting at completely different footings, and So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Carry on.
No, I was just going to mention the Marshall Plan actually as well, and just saying obviously nothing was ever offered to the East. They never got anything until much later, when they'd already built up their own economy. That's when they started getting support from the other socialist countries. Obviously the Marshall Plan and a key element of US imperialism into Europe to stop the rise of communism, of course. That's right. Because you had in France massive communist party there, same in Italy as well, and that wasn't there to alleviate people's lives. It was there to back up US hegemony in the region and to stop the influence of communists. So it wasn't just a kind of nice fluffy thing. It was it's clever, but obviously quite an evil bit of foreign policy there. The Marshall Plan is vitally important. In terms anyway of the East Germany, it was obviously under the administration of the Soviet Army, the Red Army. Germany was divided into 4 zones. The Soviet, which later became the GDR, and you had the British, American, and French zones as well, which all later formed together to form the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany. So the government that came into East Germany was a group called Freies Deutschland, which means Free Germany, who were either communists that emigrated to the USSR when Hitler came to power, or they were prisoners of war who actually turned over to the Soviet side. And they were present at the Battle of Berlin. They were flown over from Moscow to follow the Red Army. And then obviously when Hitler lost, they were there to kind of pick up the pieces and try to rebuild again. So the kind of main players there, you had the Communist Party of Germany, obviously the Communist Party, and you had the SPD, or the Social Democratic Party of Germany, which also, these two parties historically represented the German working class. And then there was the Communist Party note that was passed in 1946 to say that we should never divide the working class again, because otherwise we're going to have another Hitler. So you had the KPD and the SPD formed together to form the Socialist Unity Party, or the SED, which was then to become the leading party in what would become East Germany and the main representative of the German working class. But there was also other parties as well. There was the Christian Democratic Union and the National Liberal Party as well, which again kind of represented the more progressive bourgeoisie in a way. And every single party that formed had a clear anti-fascist message. They were all formed on the principles of popular democracy and fighting fascism. And from there, they formed the National Bloc, and they kind of ruled in a coalition there. So whenever they say that East Germany is a one-party state, it really doesn't reflect the reality of what was actually there, and it just kind of shows a bit of an ignorance in the way, because these parties did exist, and obviously they thought they worked in a coalition, but they were there. They were there to represent these key aspects of society. And they called it a popular democracy up until a later constitution, which I'm sure I'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that obviously just kind of throws apart the whole myth of, it's a one-party state, it was tyrannical, that kind of thing. No, there were other voices, and they were very well valued as well by the government.
I think what
there as well, you got
I think there was probably, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the one sort of stipulation was that they would need to be anti-fascist. I mean, they would tolerate sort of like liberals, they would tolerate liberals, social democrats, communists, and so on and so forth, but they wouldn't. There was no place for actual fascists, which unfortunately in West Germany, like, I mean, you're talking about like people who were former Nazis were still in power, in West Germany, and quite prominent
up until 1968. Key figures in the German government, the West German government, were Nazis, like just outright.
Yep.
Like Konrad Adenauer, who would become the Chancellor of West Germany, he was a Nazi.
Yep.
He had very close ties to them. I think he was again, he helped Hitler get into power. So, as far as I can see,
unbelievable.
But obviously the East Germany had the big problem of rising from the ruins, and the way they decided to do that was actually put a decision of how best to do that democratically to the people. So there was a referendum in Saxony in East Germany and Hesse in the West. And this was about and expropriating the property of Nazi landlord capitalists and war criminals. In Saxony, they voted 77% in favour, and the government instantly enacted the will of the people, i.e. take the property off the shits who supported Hitler. And I think we can all agree that's probably a good thing to do.
Fucking hell right it is.
Yeah. Like, no compensation, none of that. You don't pay him a penny. That. Fuck you. You committed war crimes and genocide. You don't get out. So that was it. That's what they did in the East, and power to them. In Hesse, the same referendum as well, they voted in favour of it by 62%, and obviously America didn't like that. So they had another referendum trying to kind of clarify the final bill, and they were kind of expecting, after like a lot of debate, that people would be turned off by it. But no, the exact opposite happened. They actually approved it by 72%. So it increased its support to, fuck the Nazis. And then what America did, they decided to ignore that. And they just basically returned all the property to the supporters of Hitler. As long as you weren't like a concentration camp, like Commandant or something, or like part of the Nazi government, you got your property back. And it was all private ownership. And again, that was in direct conflict with the wishes of the German people. America is some kind of bastion of democracy. Like, don't bother looking at their own system, because that's fucked. But like, look at what they've done in other countries as well. Will of the West German people. And and allow these criminals to get their land back.
Yep. And look, to this day, there are still people who are sort of reaping the rewards and benefits of German imperialism under the Nazis. Like, there are still people like in West Germany and that who are still very, very wealthy from the exploits of that time. So look.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, the idea of privatization came from the Nazis as well. They massively built up German industry. I mean, that's how they fueled the German war machine, because they just sold it off all to other capitalists. Yeah. And the Krupps are still around. They built the artillery for the Nazis. Oh, the Porsche's still around, Volkswagen. These were all crucial aspects of the Nazi war machine, and they're just allowed to continue. It's disgusting.
It's ridiculous.
To put it bluntly.
Fucking ridiculous.
But anyway, so Obviously, East Germany then started going down the path of the planned economy, which yielded massive benefits for the country. It allowed them to efficiently distribute scarce resources to where they were needed best. It provided great benefits to the people because real income had actually doubled in the east of Germany during the 1950s. So the people's spending power massively grew. We always talk about the West German economic miracle, but we just kind of forget the fact that life in East Germany was pretty good during this time as well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it didn't compare to the West in a way because they had the US backing and everything.
Course,
but it wasn't bad. They weren't living in like huts anymore. They had quite respectable lives as well.
Of course, yeah.
And that's down to socialist construction, bringing this incredibly poor country up to being one of the top 10 industrial powers of the world is an incredible feat. And only socialism could accomplish that. No, it's 100%. But yeah, obviously we talked about the Nazis as well. Sorry, do you want to say something there?
No, I was just thinking, I mean, we could go off on a rant about the gains, the material gains and advances and benefits just for the average working class person in East Germany. I mean, they had incredible quality of life. The story, like, it may not sound quite as impressive nowadays when we're talking about like holiday days, having like 20 odd holiday days per year, or free childcare, or when we're talking about like free healthcare, free education, all these sorts of things, because they've kind of become staples of social democracy. But at this time, middle of the 20th century, in Europe, anywhere, I mean, this wasn't the norm. This was very, very unusual. And there were so many gains. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into this a little bit later. We're going to talk,
100%.
We're going to talk about the achievements, and we're also going to give some like criticisms and things that should be improved for future experiments and that. But there's just the quality of life for the average East German. I mean, it was compared to anywhere else in the world. I mean, like, you're doing like really, really well. You're having a really good quality of life. You're enjoying yourself. You're provided basically everything that you need. You're guaranteed a job. I mean, look, you've got a right to a. It's funny because in the US they have this thing, right to work.
What a joke.
And it has the complete opposite meaning.
Look at the Rust Belt as well, though.
Exactly.
Look at the people they've abandoned. That is a joke, isn't it?
Fucking joke. But in Germany, it's like
a joke. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to our comrades over in the States at the moment, but yeah, definitely, yeah. But yeah, no, they literally had a right to work. They had a right to a job. Like everybody. I mean, I think unemployment was at like zero. I think I saw the figures, like 0.2%, 0.2% unemployment. And even then, the people who were qualifying as unemployed were not. It wasn't that they didn't have a job. It's just they were lazy bastards and they didn't go to work.
yeah, there were people.
They were just like, fuck
probably
it.
Societies are lazy, but 0.2% not in their job.
99.8% are working hard. So look, that's that's a big win.
Kings.
Yeah, this is it. Before we proceed any further, I just want to just shout out, say thank you very much to comrade Martin Barakov. Gonna have to leave for some projects I've been working on at around 3. I'm not sure what time. That's probably in about 20 minutes from where we are now, where you are coming. Probably, but definitely super hyped to watch the rest of the stream later. And then of course, red salutes, raised fists. Take care, comrades.
Legend, red salute.
Thank you very much. Red salute, absolutely. 07.
07 in the chat. Spam it now.
In the chat, spam that shit. 07. Let me pop that in there to get things started. All right, comrade. Apologies for interrupting you there.
No, it's an incredibly important contribution there. Summed it up quite well. I just wanted to get on the topic as well, the wider topic of anti-fascism as well, because obviously the Nazis didn't just vanish in 1945, as much as the West and as much as the Nazis wanted them to. Them fled to West Germany, and the ones that were massive criminals, the ones that were key in orchestrating the Holocaust, they obviously fled to South America as well. And a lot of them just lived ordinary lives after that. They weren't persecuted or anything. A lot of them never faced justice or anything.
Yeah.
So, and that's what the West provided for them. In the West as well, they actually stopped prosecuting ex-Nazis after 1951. That's when they ended the process of denazification. And even at that point, they barely prosecuted anyone before that anyway. So you guess all these people that are in the government, in the education system, and definitely in the army, that are Nazis. And that just wasn't ever dealt with. I mean, the future head of NATO was a Nazi. He was in Hitler's chief of staff for war effort. So, brilliant, And again, they say Germans have faced the legacy of fascism, but the East was much more thorough. They had absolutely no tolerance at all for fascism, and it openly declared itself as the anti-fascist state. again, because all the ruling parties have said we are anti-fascist, we are not going to stand for this shit, and they didn't. Again, like I said earlier, Nazi war criminals and those that helped Hitler were expropriated and put on trial and lost everything. They were just reduced to the status of a normal worker, and that's the way it should be. Pensions as well were given to what they called victims of fascism. So this included all the persecuted minorities, as well as obviously the Jews, homosexuals, the Roma people, and obviously the communists as well that were persecuted. And medals were also given as well to the resistance movement, which was unfortunately quite small in Germany. A lot of people bought into the fascist regime. And it also because they were giving this direct support to the victims of the Holocaust, there was never the kind of scenario in the West where a victim of the Holocaust would come back home and they would just have no home, no support. Someone was probably already taking it over, and they were more or less abandoned as well, actually. West Germans actually put Jews into camps ready to put them to Israel. And that has very bad connotations.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously. So the East Germany probably aimed to root out the fascists, and they completely restructured the education system as well. There was a mass education campaign in the East of Germany. Every single person in the country was offered a free education. So not only to root out Nazi ideology, but also to build up a more skilled labour force as well. Because they needed to reconstruct things. They needed people that were educated. So free education for everybody. And then obviously once the literacy rate had grown again, they brought it back to, free education for children and students and the like of that. But I think the fact that they just offered it from age 0 to, 100 or whatever you could have in education is quite a radical move. And it's an inspiring one as well. And it shows that if you put the resource in society, you can achieve great things.
It's hugely inspiring, absolutely hugely inspiring, absolutely amazing, and it should be very motivating for all of us. I think probably later on we'll get into like criticisms and that, but there is unfortunately there's a trend I think online of people to sort of write a lot of these experiments in socialism off, without really looking at them in their historical context, and they'll just say such and such is revisionist, Cuba's revisionist, the
obviously
GDR is revisionist, all these things are such and such, and you just throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't really sort of look at these kinds of details. But I mean, for any serious aspiring socialist, you should be really taking this seriously and really taking notes. And I'm sure you would notice that probably in your own party, in your own organisation, that the very serious communists who are actually working on building socialism right here, right now, very much are, and they're very much not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So
definitely, we have to accept these past socialist experiments with their their achievements and their flaws as well.
Exactly,
because obviously the GDR did fall. I'm not pretending it's still there.
Absolutely.
It fell for very good reasons.
Of course,
And obviously I'll get into that as well. I'm about to talk about 1953.
Yes,
which is obviously a very crucial event.
Of course,
I just want to start as well about the actual creation of the GDR. We'll actually get up to where I was supposed to be starting off from, 1949. I just want to state that the GDR did not want a divided Germany. Everyone in the East never wanted Germany to be divided. And the only reason why it was there is because it was created by historical accident and West German aggression as well. So you had the first move. The West Germans created their own currency, the Deutschmark, which was backed by the US dollar, obviously the most powerful currency at the time. And then obviously they also in early 1949, and they also founded their own conscripted army. And this was all done before the GDR implemented the same measures, and they had to implement those measures as a reaction to the West. It would have collapsed. And I think one of the things that always comes up is the Berlin Blockade. So what happened was the West implemented its new currency, and obviously Berlin was also divided into 4 zones as well. And this new currency fundamentally changed the dynamic in Germany. So before they were sharing the same currency, there was a free and open border. The trade kind of continued as normal, but when they implemented this new currency, it threatened to wipe out the East economy in a way. So they refused, and the West refused to negotiate terms to step back on this as well. They just refused to speak. So what the Soviet zone did, they blockaded Germany. They shut off all the routes into it. Nothing could get in, nothing could get out. And obviously that sounds quite bad and authoritarian, but you have to bear in mind the fact that the Allies would not speak to the Soviets about this. there was no negotiation going on there. So this was kind of the last resort, really. And, if crucial food would still get in, no one was properly starving.
Yeah.
But obviously, life got worse from that. What the Allies did in response to that was they flew in loads of food. I think there was a plane that landed like every 7 seconds or something like that. It was insane. The methods they went to maintain West Germany, because it was a thorn in the side of the Soviets and later the GDR. It was always there. It was 180 kilometers, remember, from the western border. And that's just not a natural state for a country to be in.
Yeah.
So, you have to take these desperate measures to maintain your own sovereignty in a way. Obviously, the final straw in German division was when West Germany was formed in May 1949 from the British, French and American zones, comprising about 2/3 of Germany. The negotiations have actually been taking place on this since 1946 as well. So this was a very planned process. The Allies were planning almost from the beginning to divide Germany. And as a response, the GDR was formed on the 7th of October 1949. But they never accepted division as well. And I think this is shown as well by the so-called Stalin notes, which the Soviet government sent to the Western powers, saying that, this is in 1952, by the way, so 3 years after the GDR had been formed, they were saying that we could create a united, free, democratic, neutral Germany, like what happened in Austria. So, the freedom of free elections, all this kind of thing, not committed to either military alliance as well. So no NATO, no Warsaw Pact. But the West declined it.
Yeah, that's right.
No, because they wanted Germany to be rearmed as a weapon against the new communist bloc.
Yeah.
And who were the people doing the rearming? It was the Nazis, because apparently, the Nazis make the best anti-communists in a way. Yeah. And so they refused that. They also refused as well on the grounds that they wanted to reclaim Germany's old borders in Poland as well. So at the end of the war, kind of as punishment for the war, Poland was granted new land in the West. And the West refused to accept that all the way up until 1991, actually. So there was always this threat looming of German invasion of Poland. To know, with the Stalin notes, that we always presented the view that the communists created the Iron Curtain, but it was really the West, because at every single moment, the German communists and the Soviet government were pushing for a united Germany. They didn't want this.
This is it, yeah.
But it was pushed by militarism.
This is it, exactly. I mean, all of the anything, if you all the sources point to the USSR and to the socialists, the communist bloc, or whatever you want to call it, they wanting peace. Essentially wanting, and not to get too much into the sort of later USSR revisionism or whatever like that, but actual genuinely a peaceful coexistence. I mean, it was unfortunately.
Definitely.
They twisted their arm so much, that unfortunately that wasn't possible. But that really was on the table, and that was what they were pursuing. And of course, as you said, the West unfortunately made that impossible.
Yeah, 100%. But I just think that's one of the problems with the education system here as well. It's always West good, East bad kind of thing. But
always.
If you actually scratch the surface a little bit, we do not come off great.
No,
in the West at all. The Cold War was our invention entirely. Yeah. But again, that's the education system for you, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, do you have any questions as well about the founding of the GDR? Because I'm going to talk about 1953 now. No, if that's all right.
That was really, really interesting and very, very comprehensive. What I will say is that there are a couple of questions that have come up in the chat. I'm not sure if it's useful to answer these now, or if you'd prefer to answer these a little bit later. Maybe I'll just poke. Do you want to take them a little bit later?
Sorry.
Maybe that'd be easier for you, just because
I could maybe answer one now if you want to. It depends how long the questions are.
Yeah, it kind of depends.
Yeah, I'm going to be dealing with this section pretty much, so I'm probably not going to talk about the founding of East Germany again. So I can answer a few if you want.
Yeah, well, there's no question.
I'm just going to pour another can.
Absolutely, fucking this is what we're here for. I love that sound.
Second Guinness now, that's it. We're cracking on.
Fantastic. Come here to me. There was an interesting question by the Partisan, which I think might be sort of relevant. There's another question about the labour market. Fantastic, comrade, excellent channel. Everybody go subscribe to the Partisan. Great stuff on
definitely
Yugoslavia, Titoism, all that sort of stuff. It's class. Get over there, comrades. But community, one of the comrades asked about the labour market and work and all this sort of stuff. Another comrade asked a little bit about racism in the DDR and xenophobia and stuff like that. But I think that might be something we might come to a little bit later. That might be a little bit more appropriate in a later section when we talk about like criticisms.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about obviously like race relations and stuff as well in the GDR. There's quite a nuanced
there's more
topic there. So.
Okay, we'll jump into that a little bit later then as it comes up. But let's take
about the labour market.
Well, let's return to that.
Could I have that a bit more defined?
Yeah, the labour market. Come here to me. I know we have a full section in the sort of the questions that we decided on beforehand. So we were going to talk a little bit about the socialist workplace. So this might come. It might come in during that stage. It might be better to answer that question. It was just about how. Let me see here. I'm a bit late, but I have a question. How did people enter the labour market from school? Did they have job interviews? How did they change job and so on and so forth? So maybe we'll address that when we get to that.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'll make a note of that, and I'll definitely
make a note. I have it written down here anyway.
Yeah.
I've written down here anyway.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. If you remind me, that'd be class.
Yeah, no, I will. I'll remind you when we get to the work.
I've ruined the head on this pint.
Just licked it off.
I'm focusing.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing we don't have video on for this. It's a good thing the internet wouldn't permit video for this. I should say.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to shame myself with this. You'd all laugh at me. You don't think I'm the first time at the Guinness.
What a joke. What the fuck
You're not fine, man. They don't think I'm not credible enough. They think I'm a child and have to sack off everything I've said.
Oh, yeah, this child doesn't know what he's talking about. The GDR can't drink a Guinness.
We think Sterling was good. Communist propaganda.
Justified by the lack of head on the point. All right, well anyway, come here. Let's push forward because we can go out the track here. A little bit, but no.
Easily,
the Partisan had a good question now, which probably now is probably the best time to deal with. So, comrade Partisan says, since we're talking about reparations and such, what was the FDR's feelings on the holding of German prisoners of war? Do you know? I know we're focusing more on the GDR, but do you know much about the FDR's takes on how they were feeling about the sort of anti-fascism in East Germany?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of the German prisoners of war were actually kept in the Soviet Union until about 1955. So they're there for quite a while, and they were also undergoing education there as well. They were, being taught in much more socialist ideas. The East wanted them to come back as a kind of new vanguard for socialism as well. Obviously, the West referred to them as captives. They were there imprisoned in almost like concentration camps, which is just blatantly not true, looking at the conditions they were kept in. And they almost became kind of anti-communist martyrs as well. There's kind of this thing, this cause that the Soviet Union is keeping our people in prison while we have to go on this almost anti-communist crusade in a way. And the West cracked down on communists intensely. So they crushed peaceful marches for peace. They disrupted communist organizations, threw them in prison. It's kind of the usual thing that you see in a lot of these Western-backed countries. But yeah, these Wehrmacht soldiers definitely became a kind of martyr because the German kind of concept of guilt to do with the Second World War is really fascinating how it developed. But just to do it kind of briefly, there was this attempt to disassociate the crimes of the German army with that of the Nazi Party and the SS. So every single German soldier in the army was deemed to have served their country with honour, just following orders, quote unquote. So yeah, they kind of came this kind of cause to continue the Cold War in a way, and they came back in 1955, and most of them were fine.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Fantastic, great stuff. Okay, fantastic, comrade. Let's go ahead and push ahead then. I'll let you continue with your fantastic overview of what was going on in GDR chronologically.
Yeah. So the second topic I'm going to cover is the June Rising of 1953. I won't lie, I am going to be a little bit brief here because I haven't actually read enough on the topic, and it is a very intensely complex situation there. But just to kind of give a brief overview, and what I've kind of seen so far is that it began, GDR announced a so-called intensification of the class struggle, which meant that an increased production quotas for most workers without additional benefits, to try and quickly build up the productive forces to compete with the West. And obviously this This didn't fly well with a lot of the German working class. I think they're quite understandably pissed off about it as well. They weren't getting additional stuff for much harder labour. So a lot of them downed tools on the 17th of June and went on strike. I think that's definitely an honourable cause, and there should have been negotiation there. But the problem is that it was clear that West German dissidents were getting involved with the movement, and there's CIA records as well of them sending massive amount of money into these strike committees and stuff to overthrow socialism as well. So I guess in light of this as well, the government reaction was very rash and very harsh as well. So they used Soviet tanks to repress the strikes and the protests, and it led to about 55 to 122 deaths. And I think this is a very kind of clear eye-opener and a massive criticism of the GDR, the fact that they took this oppressive action as well against what was mostly worker strikes in response to quite crap demand, they were being pushed onto. And this also massively shook the SED leadership as well. They always had this kind of enduring fear of opposition movements. If there was these kind of underground movements that were forming, you see this later with the peace movement. There was an official peace movement, but there was also kind of underground one as well. And also the environmentalist movement. That was all heavily infiltrated by the Stasi later on. Obviously, I'll discuss them later. But yeah, it very much left this impression in the mind of the East German leadership that if someone is going to oppose the socialist system, not through the legal means, then it should be. They didn't shoot opposition groups later. Obviously, they kind of relied on fear, intimidation, and dispersing these people rather than, throwing them in a prison forever. Yeah. So I think that's a very valid criticism of East Germany, and I definitely take that on, and I need to read more about this. But we need to recognise as well, obviously, I'm not an apologist for the East German government. I recognise there were very clear faults in it as well. But, like you were saying as well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to recognise that we have to think dialectically about it. We have to see that there's positives and negatives and come to a kind of conclusion based on that.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, comrade. Absolutely brilliant. Are you okay with taking another Q&A question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now this is. I'm not sure if you know anything about. I don't actually know anything about this particular question, but Comrade Berrimans has asked. It might not be super relevant, but I was wondering. Maybe it's slightly off topic here, but let's see, and then we can jump back in. But I was wondering if Swann was familiar with Bertolt Brecht and his position in the GDR.
He's a king.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
I'm quite familiar with him. Yeah, I used to do drama actually, so I kind of know a little bit about Brecht.
Let's jump in.
I don't know where you want me to go with that, but obviously he was he was a fervent supporter of the East German government. I believe he was from the West originally, and he was a communist as well, and he was writing these plays. I think he was also part of the resistance against Hitler as well. But he migrated from the West to the East, and he was quite a massive part of the culture scene there as well. His plays were put on everywhere. He was kind of held up as well by the government. And I'm going to talk later about socialist culture as well, about the flourishing of the arts and the films and stuff, and kind of countering this belief that intellectuals didn't have any say in East Germany. All their thoughts were kind of monitored and stuff, and they couldn't think with their own mind or critique the government. A lot of them did critique the government. A lot of the best works and a lot of the most popular works in East Germany were ones that attacked the government. But they were kind of doing it from that socialist perspective as well, and I think that's what's quite important. It wasn't a kind of counter-revolutionary thing. It was a kind of, we work on this fault and we can build a better socialism.
Collectively, yeah.
And that's the way it should be, Point out the faults, you can fix them, and you can build a better world. But yeah, Bertolt Brecht is well worth looking into. I want to read more about him. I think a book just came out about him, so I might get my hands on that at some point. But yeah, he was quite a big supporter of the East German government, and overall a base legend.
Fantastic! Thank you very much, comrade. You're like an encyclopedia on this subject. I absolutely love it, because I was absolutely like.
I'm sorry that. I've probably got at least 7 things wrong so far.
Jesus, I see some fucker in the chat Holy moly, what are you doing? What are you doing? We have
What
three.
shine.
I'm so sorry, but holy moly, what are you doing? I'm skipping over the fantastic. We have a list of questions. People have been given a load of questions here and have been adding them to the list. But then Holy moly comes out and they're just like, oh, okay, what are Socialist Swann's view of the PRC? So China discourse. Fuck that.
Then good. Xi Jinping good.
Xi Jinping. Oh wow!
Support.
You're getting cancelled. You're going.
That's now cancelled. Brilliant. Now.
Thrown
No,
out.
I mean, I
fish
haven't
people.
read enough about it. I'm joking.
The fish people and the hamburger
I need to know
people
more.
are gonna be coming after you now on
Oh,
Twitter.
Mango Gang. Sorry, that's it.
Your mango gang.
Mango Gang. Full on Mango Gang message. No. Look, that's it now. You see, we're talking about all my opinions getting discredited. That's just happened now, hasn't it?
It's just happened now. Yeah, well, do you know, look, I'd appreciate if more people just say, actually, I don't know enough about the subject. It's going to take me a little while. I'm going to look into it a little bit later. Because even, do you know, it's really funny because, like, I've talked to like people who are like seasoned communists, who are like people who are like in their 70s and 80s, and you know, a lot of communists in Ireland will be quite elderly, and you know, I've talked to them a little bit about that, and they'll just say China is this country of great contradictions, and they'll say that it's very complicated, and it's very, very difficult to say one way or the other, and so we're watching it sort of cautiously and curiously, but it's very difficult to confirm one way or the other, you know, and so it's very strange when you see like these fucking 16-year-olds and 20-year-olds who are just like, yes, it's this, or no, it's that, or whatever it is.
Was that to get me there, 20-year-olds?
This is exactly, and it's like the certainty with which these people are speaking is it's, you know, you just need to maybe, I suppose, take
you need a lot more nuance, and also
more
as well, I
nuance.
think the news sources that we have as well, we don't actually really know what's going on there. And again, I'm gonna wait patiently to see how socialism in 2050 works.
Yeah.
If it does, brilliant. If not, then okay, maybe I'll get rid of the mango in my name.
2049 December
2049,
December 30th. You're just like, oh fuck. Are they
Sat there on
socialist
New
yet?
Year's Eve with the pints, waiting for it to come.
We'll be right back here doing this exact thing.
Oh god, yeah. Just on stream, we'll all be sat here. I might have a few guests as well, actually. Just waiting for the moment on midnight where it's like we are now socialists.
We're socialists.
And that'll be class.
Full
just to see everyone's
communist.
faces. That's it, yeah. A full speed to full communism in 2051. How about that?
How about that?
Look, I'll be as much surprised as you all, but I think that'll be fucking funny.
Very, very fucking funny. Ari, come here. I apologise. We went off track there, and we were doing great stuff on the GDR.
Discourse.
No China discourse, because this is exactly what happens when we start talking about China. Oh, fuck's sake, yeah. All right. Let's dial it back. See, this is what you do, holy moly. What are you doing? This messing. This kind of messing with you.
It's just shy. It's just sly.
All right, community. That was brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Okay, maybe I'll let you fire ahead then with some more of the historical overview. We'll push back through with that, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I was going to talk about the wall next, so you can cancel me for that as well. The wall.
You're going to get the wall for
again, that. A massive... Oh, yeah, that's it, wall, now. Disagree, go. Now, again, a massively complex situation, but I've actually read a little bit more about this one, so I can maybe answer a few more questions on that. And it's a massive turning point in the history of the GDR because things fundamentally change after the building of the wall. It was built on the 13th of August 1961, and the GDR officially called it the Anti-Fascist Protection Rampart, which is quite a cool name, or just the Berlin Wall. And we need to understand as well the circumstance that led up to it. It's always presented as a kind of monocausal thing. You know, they were locking in their own people, they were separating families. But that just isn't the case. Obviously, there was an element as well to do with migration. I'm going to talk about that quite in depth. But nothing in history is monocausal. There's always different things that are going on. And anyone that wants to kind of reduce history to one cause clearly doesn't care about the profession and the study of it as well. So I'm going to look at the few reasons that led to the construction of the wall and also how it impacted East German society. So first of all, the big one that's always talked about is migration. And obviously the East was hemorrhaging skilled workers, intellectuals. Roughly 143,000 of these people fled the East in 1959 and 199,000 fled in 1960. And half of these were under the age of 25, still young people. And this wasn't because they were being persecuted or anything like that, but they were economic migrants. Again, I was talking earlier about to increase people's skills. And this was especially directed to polytechnics as well. Like the idea of a modern polytechnic school actually comes from the GDR. That kind of study into more practical things and manufacturing, that kind of stuff. And again, that massive education drive meant there was a lot of skilled workers in the country who wanted work as well. And because the West never recognised the East as a legitimate state, any migrant that came in would be granted instant citizenship and state support as well, at least for a while. And obviously they were also calling out for manufacturers and engineers, all this kind of thing. And the West clearly had a superiority in production of consumer goods. Again, they had that massive Western backing. So this was the big drive for a lot of intellectuals and skilled workers in the GDR who were getting their basic needs or getting their free house, a house with 2 to 5% of their wages rent. Their right to work, they were getting significantly reduced. What's the word I'm looking for? It begins with S. Subsidized like food and all this kind of thing. Obviously, they wanted more. And again, it's quite easy to get hold of West German TV, radio, and stuff in the East. So it was kind of this image of the grass is green on the other side. So a lot of people wanted to leave the GDR to get their hands on these consumer goods, live the luxurious life, live the American dream in a way. And that's why, but it's also quite important to note as well that the people leaving weren't the ordinary working class. A lot of the ordinary working people stayed in the East because they recognised that their working rights were much better in the East. They had all their necessities catered for. And their workplaces were safer, more communal, and less exploitative as well. I can obviously cover that later. So a lot of the people leaving were these skilled workers, educated in the GDR for free by the GDR. So they wanted to keep these people who could obviously build a socialist economy in the GDR. So there was this need to stop the open border. That the open border had been there, and recognising that. It's not natural for a country to be divided in that way. We talked about Berlin being 180 kilometres away from the western border, and these two hostile nations sharing an open border is not a natural way to be. We also have to recognise as well that Berlin was a mecca for spies. Spies were pouring out everywhere. The West German intelligence services, the BND, was actually founded by a Nazi as well. He was called Reinhard Gehlen, and he was one of the key spies of the USSR during the Second World War. And they recruited him because he knew a lot about the USSR. He brought in his Nazi mates as well, and they were conducting espionage in the East. And they needed to shut that down pretty much as well. So there's that an element of national security there as well. But yeah, migration, obviously we have to recognise that people were leaving as well. And it was trying to keep their skilled workers in there.
There is that issue. There is that serious issue with brain drain. People getting this great education in the East, and then moving over and getting a higher paid job. Realistically, like a higher paid job over in the West, and so that's very enticing as well. So
definitely, yeah. But then obviously look at the way the West was run. It's all about catering for the richest, whilst the poorest get nothing, or at least very little.
This is it.
So if you are someone who has the skills, you are going to seek out a better life for yourself. And the GDR couldn't give that at that point. Again, open border, and I'm going to talk about this as well in a moment, actually. So I think it's also just important as well to talk about the casualties at the wall. There were 187 people that were killed at the Berlin Wall from 1961 to 1989. And that's obviously awful. It's not nice at all, I'll say that. But it's also important to mention as well that there were GDR as well. And a lot of people took advantage of this. There were still legal channels. So no one was... whilst the process is going on, you would come under investigation by the Stasi, but they wouldn't throw you in prison or anything. They would monitor you. But you could get to the West if you were committed to it. So the kind of thesis that went behind the Berlin Wall was that the people who are going to be trying to get through it are most likely going to be spies. And they were also dangerous as well, the people that were escaping as well. 24 border guards were killed at the border. And if they weren't armed, they obviously couldn't defend themselves. So the people that are breaking through the wall, and the most determined in a way, and obviously there would be people there that were very desperate, and obviously my sympathies go to them, but you also have to recognise as well that this was the front line of the Cold War. Yeah. There's two hostile blocks, and there couldn't be the opportunity to compromise your national security there. You couldn't let these spies get about freely. There have to be restrictions. So I think we have to recognise that it wasn't a nice decision, but it was a necessary one in a way as well. Yeah. But we need a lot of nuance on that. Again, other reasons though, obviously I talked about the migration, and that's one of the main ones, definitely. I'll say that, and I'll agree with that. But there were other issues as well. There was the national security issue. I've talked about the spies so far, but also the numerous military threats as well. There were always standoffs at the border between Western and Eastern tanks. There was always the tensions of a Third World War, and if it was to kick off, it would be at the German border. And again, we talked about how the situation was just not normal. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. Germany wasn't supposed to be divided like this, and Berlin certainly wasn't supposed to be divided like that. It was always referred to as the fall of the GDR side, and the West recognised that. And as it militarised, as they got access to nuclear weapons in 1958, it joined NATO. The GDR had to defend itself, and there was a Bundeswehr general, and he was also an ex-Nazi as well, who said on June the 24th, 1961, so just over a month before the wall was built, he said a German reunification, which every German patriot dreams of, would be a reunification with waving flags and a victorious troop of the Bundeswehr parading through the Brandenburg Gate. So there was a direct threat there of invasion. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the wall was built just over a month after that was said, especially when you bear in mind the military circumstances as well that were going on. So there was that fundamental issue of protecting socialism. There was also the economic aspect as well. The GDR was economically isolated. The West implemented the Steel Embargo in 1952, and they also, they couldn't get access to the raw materials it needed to build the economy. And they also had something called the Halstein Doctrine, which meant that any country that recognised the GDR instantly cut off ties with. That was it. You wouldn't be trading anymore. They wouldn't have any diplomatic recognition. And because the West was the more lucrative trading partner, was producing more goods, you wanted to maintain trade with the West. So you would cast aside the East and they would get nothing. So the East literally had nothing to gain from this open border situation. They were getting no free trade, and there was the massive brain drain as well. So there was no benefit to the East, but yet they maintained it for so long as well. Again, that kind of principle of Germany should be united above all. But it got to the point where it had to, they have to guarantee their national security and the wider socialist bloc as well from Western aggression. Of course. So they had to build the wall. And once the wall was built as well, the GDR's economy was able to develop much more freely and much more efficiently as well. It's after the building of the wall that the economy and the living standards massively grew, because it became a much more self-sustaining system. They became much more self-sufficient, and that's because their borders were secure. Not as many people were leaving the country anymore, and they didn't have to invest as much as well on the military. They still have to maintain military investment, obviously, but they didn't have to do it to such an extent that it detrimented the people. So we have to recognise that the Berlin Wall wasn't a nice thing. I'll say that over and over again. It was not nice, but it was really necessary as well for the times that East Germany was in. And it wasn't just there to divide families and keep people away. It was there to defend the East at the end of the day. It was a national border. And we've got to talk as well about the fact that borders are never safe. The US, I believe it's something like 9,000 people have died at the US border from 1997 to 2017.
When you put them side by side, like there's no comparison.
Again, 187 is deaths of a tragedy, but that's over a 40-year period. About a 25-year period compared to 9,000 at the US border.
There's no comparison.
You have to bear these things in mind.
Yeah, no, there's no comparison there. It's ridiculous. Yeah, absolutely.
But also when you recognise as well, there were those legal channels to leave as well. Yeah. People weren't. Emigration still happened in the GDR. It was just lessened. So, because the border wasn't, you couldn't just walk over the border anymore. You didn't need papers. and you walk in, and the West German border guard will say, that's a citizenship house. Get to work.
Yeah. Look, come here to me. If you're a serious socialist, then you'll understand that there will be the necessity to avoid these kinds of situations that we're going to find ourselves in, being within this imperialist capitalist world. And putting up the border at that stage was probably their best chance at maintaining the socialist path, in that time and place in the world, and staving off, I suppose, the relentless undermining from Western powers. So you need to put it in that kind of context, and it's not necessarily fair to compare that to other free liberal Western countries or whatever the fuck it might be, because they didn't have to deal with this fucking problem.
100%. I've already talked as well about how poor East Germany was to start with.
Yeah.
And I've also talked as well about their commitment to peace and their commitment to unification at every single point. I think the fact that they kept the border open so long without any economic benefit in any way, shape or form shows a certain tolerance on the East German behalf, and they had to close it because of that Western aggression. It wasn't an easy decision to make, but it had to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Conrad. Really, really good.
I'm happy to take questions there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic.
I'm sure there'll be a few.
I don't see any questions on the wall on this particular topic at the moment.
I am very surprised.
It's a huge topic, so I'm a little bit surprised as well. Are you open to taking questions about other subjects? Because we've got a few there. We've got about 6 or 7 right now.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. We'll take a little sidetrack now. So come here to me. I'm not sure if you've heard of this person, Paul Moran. Could you ask?
I've heard of him. He seems alright.
Seems like a bit of a dick, but alright. Bit of a fucking drunk.
I'll have a drink of him, but maybe not one.
1 or 2 anyway. Jeez, how many are on now? Well, I can't measure with vodka, but I don't know. What do you want? Like you're on your 3rd beer, okay. Well, that's when things start to get exciting. So
it's 4th when it gets bad.
Oh, this is when you start to forget things. Anyway, alright. Well, it's all here permanently now on YouTube. For the good people who are watching.
I'm going to try not to make too much of a tale of myself, but we'll see.
Well, come here to me, myself and you go up, and I've probably done far worse in the past, so just keep that in your mind and
that's my guardian life,
enjoy the rest of the stream with that knowledge, content in that knowledge. So come here to me, one of the comrades asked, could you ask about Socialist Swann's opinion of Egon Krenz? Have you heard of this?
Egon Krenz?
Egon Krenz.
Yeah. He took over from the GDR. He took over from Honecker after he resigned in 1989, and he was kind of pitched as the reform candidate, almost like a kind of line to Gorbachev.
Gotcha.
And he was definitely much more of a socialist than Gorbachev. I'd say much more kind of on the lines of Khrushchev. I wouldn't malign him as much, but his claim to power was based on basically shitting on everything that the GDR government had done, pretty much, but maintaining that socialist course. So he kind of... Can you hear the pint?
Very well, yeah.
So he was... again, he's a complex figure. Later on, to his credit, he upholds the GDR, he definitely defends it a lot, but because he came into power at the time when reform was being demanded, he kind of had to give concessions in a way, but they just weren't enough. I think the GDR was too far gone by the time that he came into power.
Yeah, over the course
force has already been set in place. But I'm sure I can talk about him later as well. He'll come up again. But yeah, I don't have any strong opinions towards him. He's basically irrelevant. So there we go. But he obviously played a big role in the government of the GDR. But when he comes to power, he's there to oversee the transition from socialism to capitalism, and he did that quite well.
Unfortunately, counter-revolutionary. But anyway, good stuff. Thank you very much. Come here, just a quick. We do a quick one here before we jump back into it. There's one on anarchism, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. The Kreuzer.
Anarchism. Ooh.
We'll come back to that one a little bit later, I think, because it's kind of a different topic. But it is a fun one to talk about, and that's kind of when we're sort of 3 hours in and
it's not relevant right now, but I'm happy to talk about it later.
We'll definitely jump into it properly later. Yeah. The Kreuzer asks, no, I don't know this thoughts on Goodbye Lenin. A question
Goodbye
for
Lenin.
Swann.
Oh, it's a brilliant film.
That's a question.
No, I really like that film.
I haven't seen that. Why haven't I seen that?
You should watch it. It's really good. It's it's a film about it's done during the fall of the war, yeah. And this guy in East Germany, his mum is a significant part of the East German state, and she sees her son partaking in the protests in 1989, and she basically has a heart attack, and she's hospitalised, and she wakes up after the wall has fallen, after the Germans have been reunited, and it's this guy's kind of mission to, she has any shock, she will die, yeah. So it's his kind of mission to make life seem as normal as possible. So he's kind of devised these things to make it look like East Germany's still there.
Oh, okay.
It's an incredible. So it kind of delves into those themes of what they call nostalgia, which is nostalgia for East Germany. It's just a brilliant film, and the ending scene is incredible. It's what I wish actually happened.
That sounds great. That sounds fucking deadly. Actually, I've added that to my list.
No, as soon as you can, do watch that. It's brilliant.
Watch that. It sounds cool. Yeah, it's got 90% on Rotten Tomatoes apparently.
Again, also grapples with those themes of what was good in the GDR, what was not good, and it's quite as far as films and media on the GDR, that's probably one of the best ones. I quite like Deutschland 83 as well, if anyone's seen that. Although there are a few things I disagree with in there, so good. There's better stuff now. Better stuff than say like Stasi-Land and that. Just a bunch of shite. But there we go.
Principled critique there, a bunch of shite. Brilliant. Come here to me. Let's push on. So we were talking about the wall and that, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to 1971, so 10 years. This is the we're getting close to the end, and we're ready to get the tissues out to cry. So.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be looking at the transfer of leadership from Walter Ulbricht to Erich Honecker. So he took over as leader. General Secretary of the Socialist Unity Party in 1971, and he aimed to change the course of the GDR. So his main policy was something called the unity of economic and social policy, which means using the developed productive forces, the industrial potential of the country, to better serve the people. So that meant patching up the shortages in consumer goods, trying to meet the demand that was there, because obviously the focus had been on heavy industry. Consumer goods were lacking. And that was one of the main draws to the West, the fact they had all of this. Although obviously certain things are still quite hard to get. Bananas are the classic one because of the embargo. They couldn't get hold of exotic fruit. That's always something that's brought up as a laugh.
Bananas.
Bananas. Banana meat. Maybe that's the new the emoji for Twitter. I don't know.
I love it.
The new fruit theme.
Banana gang.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's gonna be some weird fucking. I don't know. People are going to infer from that weird, strange things. All right.
It's fine. Well, they also call there's also a meme as well of the GDR being the gay police state. So
gay police state.
The gay police state.
That sounds fucking great.
We're going to get onto that. It sounds class.
That sounds fucking deadly.
That's communism right there.
Class, luxury, automated, space, gay communism, or whatever they fucking call it.
That is it. Fully automated.
Fully automated luxury gay space communism. Yeah. Class.
Yeah, because you always see the edits of the GDR's flag, but it's like a trans flag, and it's just incredible. Yeah. I love it. It's a bitch.
It's class.
But yeah, getting back to Honecker, keeping on topic.
Yeah, staying on topic. Principled communists.
Exactly, principle. We are serious on this street. We never joke, not once.
Not drunk.
Never have, never would. Not drunk, not yet.
Just about 20 more minutes, we'll see.
So there was also a mass home building campaign as well, because there was the fundamental right to housing in the GDR. And a lot of the focus before with Ulbricht was renovating city centres and homes that had been destroyed by the war. There was also a lot of homes being built as well, homes per year that were being built under Ulbricht. And Honecker stepped that up. So from 1971 to 1989, 100,000 new homes were built every single year. And 10,000 as well. So they were building these things called Socialist New Towns, which meant that all the basic needs, so say shops or schools or workplaces or any other kind of facility, like leisure centres or anything like that, they were all within 500 metres walk of a house. And if they weren't, there was incredibly cheap and massively extensive public transport networks to get you there. So this kind of eliminated the need for a car. Obviously, there's always the Trabant meme of it being a shitty car, but it served its purpose as well. And also was very hard to get hold of. So you had to build these new towns where people could walk everywhere or could get a tram or a train or anything. And that was probably one of his most effective policies. But that also meant that a lot of the city centres became more run down because the focus was building on new homes rather than renovating old ones. So when you have the West Germans coming over to the East after the wall's fallen, they see these in a lot of places, like there's kind of back streets and cities and stuff where it's basically a shithole. But that's because the energy is being focused onto building new towns for people to move into, rather than renovating old homes, because that takes a lot more money and a lot more effort. And these are all the kind of, they call it Plattenbau, so it's four kind of like prefabricated, four-story prefabricated Soviet block buildings, and in them grew really quite vibrant communities as well, because you had all different jobs, like all different professions and walks of life living together as a community, and they were responsible for the maintenance of their own homes. So they would also organise like social events and parties, and it's something that's fundamentally different to living in a flat in the capitalist society. You're kind of isolated in a way. There isn't that sense of community so much, whereas in the GDR that was really fostered. It's one of the things that East Germans look back on really fondly, because that community spirit went away with capitalist restoration.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we should aspire to as well. Housing for everybody, the fundamental right to a house.
100%.
And I obviously know that Ireland has quite a big problem with housing right now.
Huge
but
problem.
It's also the same with London as well. I mean, I don't associate with that lot, but I've heard missed some rumours. Yeah. So, but if you direct the productive force of society towards the betterment of the people, you can accomplish such amazing things instead of just facilitating private greed. And I think that's one of the things that really shines in the GDR as well. Also other policies as well. He took a turn away from the market reforms and started nationalising what remained as small business as well, which means that the planned economy was much more reinforced rather than dismantled, which you kind of see in other socialist countries. It's kind of turned towards marketisation. The GDR kind of cemented its principles there as a planned economy. And the plan ultimately was to compete or overtake with the West, which was quite utopian. That probably never would have happened, to be honest, bearing in mind the conditions the GDR was under. But that goal was there, and they definitely tried to achieve it. But maybe that fostering of a kind of focus around consumer goods meant that it was much more easy to compare the GDR's way of life to the West German way of life. And the West Germans would always look better on the front of consumer goods, because that's what it's built around, isn't it? It's not built around caring for the people en masse. It's there to look pretty, And again, where West German television was completely available to watch across East Germany as well. After I believe it was 1971, it was completely decriminalised. But before that, barely anyone was ever done for watching West German television. It was just kind of the dumb thing. But when you kind of change the goal of society to and living a good personal life, you can't compete with the West on that front.
Of course not. And unfortunately, people who were born into this kind of situation in like East Germany or whatever it might be, very, very quickly will start to take for granted all of the gains and the things that they have. The free healthcare, the free education, just the employment, everything, all of these incredible gains, the women's rights, everything. They're just common sense. They're not up for debate. And so they see in West Germany that people have these fancy cars and they're reading these fancy magazines, and very quickly, people very quickly, what those basic necessities like having a roof over your head and having food in your stomach and all sorts of things, people very quickly forget about how important those things are. There's a very good series. There's a very good series that one of the comrades on Twitter recommended that I watch. Donbass on Twitter recommended, and I've put it actually in the description box of this video for anybody who's interested. It's a new series from a communist organization.
Is it Das andere Leben?
Yes.
Excellent. I love that so much.
I think it's finishing. Is it? If I'm correct now, if it's the same one now, there's it's a 4-part documentary. Maybe it's I think it's a 4-part documentary series.
The fourth one's coming out on the 11th of October.
That's
so
right.
3 days.
It's coming out.
They're
on
going
Sunday.
to talk about the downfall of the GDR there as well, and all the subtitles are in English as well. So it's really easy to watch. And again, they always say, speak to someone who lives into communism. They'll tell you it's a shithole. But listen to the way that these people talk about their lives. It kind of just drives home that socialism works.
It's crazy,
and it benefits people. And there was kind of assumption as well when it came to 1989 and the downfall of the wall and that. Well, it was just this assumption that they would have kept all the fundamental benefits that they grew up with, but that just wasn't the case. And that's why right now you have 57% of people in the East thinking they're second-class citizens, because they've lost all these basic rights. And I'll talk about that later. I'll definitely talk about that later, because there's a lot of questions there about the rise of the far right in East Germany as well. Was it because it was a racist state, or I've got another view. I'll talk about that.
We'll have to jump into that. That's a really big question, an important question as well to deal with. Yeah, fantastic. If anyone wants to check that out and you want to actually hear what the actual East Germans, people who lived through it, have to say about it, in the description box below this video, go down to the bottom of the description box. You'll have to click read more or whatever it might be at the very bottom of it, and you'll see the link to the first 3 of those videos. Again, the subtitles are in English. Don't be put off by the German titles of them. They're incredible. Each one's about half an hour long, and it'll just blow your mind listening to these people who lived through socialism in the GDR. Absolutely incredible stuff. So yeah, you can have a little look at that there. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, comrade. Just want to quickly read out one of the little super chats here. A question. I'm not sure if you want to take this straight away, or if you want to.
I might crack on with a bit more about Hanukkah after the super chat as well.
Yeah,
quickly.
Okay, so we're gonna jump at the Hanukkah as well. Interesting topic as well, because people have different. You can be quite divisive as well. I think as well amongst leftists. So let's quickly. I'm just going to quickly take this one. Thank you, comrade.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Dr. Slappy. Paul Moran, did the Soviets have a plan like the Marshall Plan in the GDR, and what economic aid did the GDR receive, and how did its economy develop? There's a big one.
Do you want to say that?
I'll go through that again. So did the Soviets have a plan like the Marshall Plan in the GDR? Nothing like that, no. And actually,
nothing like that.
And had to pay reparations as well to the Soviets.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
it's really tough.
I think when it actually came down to it, like the GDR spent billions of pounds billions of marks. We're not in Britain anymore. Billions of marks. It's the Anglo mindset, the billions of marks to the Soviet Union. And a lot of its economy was spent on paying reparations to the USSR, and like I said earlier as well, a lot of their industry, what was left of their industry were ships of Russia as well. So it was basically left with nothing when it started. Like, absolutely, I mean, it gives new meaning to the national anthem, "Rising from the Ruins," because they literally did. So there was no kind of Marshall Plan style thing. The East Germans only started really getting aid when their economy had already developed on the back of their own work. And they got subsidised oil and a lot of subsidised exports into Germany. But there wasn't much as well. There was a lot of shortages as well in the USSR. And East Germany had very few natural resources. And again, it was more or less embargoed by the entire world because of that Halstein Doctrine, which meant if you recognise the East, the West won't recognise you.
It's like Cuba nowadays, really.
Exactly, yeah.
Same kind of thing.
100% like that. And what they achieved as well under that embargo is incredible.
Yeah.
Same
with
Cuba. And only
socialism
could, I was specifically talking about Cuba there. Like, it's only socialism can do that as well. They can organise the economy to be the most efficient it can be with the resources that it's got at the time. They can't have this utopian vision of we're going to have full communism in like 10 years or some shit. You have to deal with what you're living in right now, and only Marxist-Leninist countries specifically can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Socialism emerges from the material conditions within which it finds itself developing. So, I mean, it's sometimes, unfortunately, people take this kind of, as one of the comrades in the CPI had mentioned to me before, that it's like a checklist. It needs to be A, B, C, and D, and only then will I determine that it's socialism.
I, the Western leftist, will pronounce my approval upon the fledgling country of the global South.
Armchair.
Which my country has demolished. The armchair. I'm sat in a chair right now.
I wish I had an armchair.
Real comrades should stand. All moments. Sitting is counter-revolutionary, comrades. Why are you not engaging in the struggle right now?
The stand struggle, yeah. Actually, one of the comrades as well, just underneath that message that we had there, as we want says, join the YCL and CPB for any British comrades. I have to read that out straight away.
Yes, do it. Brilliant. I want that read out every single time it's commented now. Join the YCL, join your local Communist Party.
And if you're...
Have a brilliant time.
Absolutely. If you're in Ireland, 100% join the CYM, Conley Youth Movement, join the Communist Party of Ireland. Get in here, lads. You'll have a great time.
Get in an org, because there's no point organised on your own. You can't do anything on your own. We accomplish great things, and that's what an org can do.
This is it, exactly, 100%. Up the YCL, up the CYM, up the CPI, up the CPB.
Red salute, comrades.
Red salute. 07.
07 in the chat now.
Let's see those little 07s in the chat there.
Get it done. I mean, I can't see him because I don't trust my Wi-Fi, but I hope they're
there. We'll just trust that they're there. Good stuff. Community, before we jump in, I mean, this person, you'll appreciate this. Before we jump into Honecker, because the name of this one is actually that Honeckerist.
Oh, he's a good lad.
Just a great name. Yeah. What does Swann think of Wilhelm Pieck?
Wilhelm
Pieck and Ernst Thälmann?
Ernst Thälmann.
Thälmann, that's the one.
Thälmann.
Come here to me.
Yeah.
Do you know much about either one of those?
I know a fair bit about Ernst Thälmann.
Okay.
But I don't know a lot about Wilhelm Pieck.
Right. Okay.
I know he was the president of the GDR for the early years, but I'm pretty sure that was more of a ceremonial role. He felt that Lubric had the real kind of power. But he was obviously a brilliant anti-fascist. So. Before you
give your take on that, do you mind if I just run to the Jack real quick? Is that okay too?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Do you want to witter on whilst you're having a was?
We can just do like dead silence. You don't need to say it. And...
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I'll just sit here and drink my pint. I'll sup on it. I'll give the occasional comment about the taste.
Yeah, why not? Just sipping sounds for the next 30 seconds to a minute.
I'll open a can as well towards the end.
No, if you want, you can take that question at the moment. Do you want me to give you another question in case it runs over, or do you think you can talk about that for a minute?
I can talk about a minute. You're a pretty quick pisser, so it'll be right.
I'll work on it anyway. I'll be as fast as I can now.
Lovely sprint.
Back in a minute.
All right. Yeah. So I've already talked about Wilhelm Pieck. Again, I don't really know a lot about him. But Ernst Thälmann is one of the guiding lights of communism in Germany. He was the head of the German Communist Party from, I believe it was the late 1920s to when Hitler came to power in 1933. And he was one of the main anti-fascists in Germany. He was involved in the Spartacist uprising in 1919, and he was also involved in the 1923 revolution as well, one that was not successful. But he was in Hamburg. He was directly involved in the struggle there, fighting on the streets and that. He's mainly the anti-fascist struggle and building communist politics. He was a docker, a firm trade unionist, organised his workplace. He's one of those few communists as well that's actually from the working class, which is always nice to see. A lot of them tend to be more intellectuals, but he was fundamentally involved in the struggle. And he organised something called the Red Front Fighting League, which was a paramilitary group that actively fought Nazis on the streets. That the Weimar German government at the time actually banned them. They banned anti-fascism, which might have some dodgy parallels for the modern day. But yeah, even after they were banned, they continued the struggle. They were actively still fighting, and they fought up until the election of Hitler, where they unfortunately didn't succeed, and Nazism came to rule Germany. Ernst Thälmann, I believe it was Buchenwald concentration camp. He was there from 1933 up until he was executed in 1943, I think it was. It was quite late on. I'm surprised that Hitler didn't kill him off earlier, to be honest with you, but it would have looked bad. I don't know. But I'm not sure Hitler would have been concerned about his public image. But yeah, Ernst Thälmann is an incredibly inspiring figure, but there's really not much out there about him in the English language. If you want to read about him, really, you either have to read bourgeois sources or you have to read the original German, which is quite a shit experience for either of them. But yeah, I wish there was more about him in English because people should know more about him. And again, he was very much idolised in the GDR. He was much more looked at than, say, Rosa Luxemburg, because I guess he was more politically active. He obviously survived the murder. He survived the 1990 revolution. There's an excellent statue to him as well in Berlin that if you ever swing by there, you can have a look at. But they're trying to tear it down, which is a common theme of the West to tear down East German history. I like doing that. But yeah,
absolutely.
Ernst Thälmann, very based, very epic. Good lad.
Class.
Would have a pint with him.
10 out of 10 would have pointed.
I think that's a good sign of someone's character. I'd have a pint with you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the absolute litmus test, I think, for a proper comrade.
I mean, I'd have a lovely East German pint with him, but I can't find them because the fucking West got rid of them all, didn't they? So, See, that's why I hate the West now. They took away East German beer.
What's the fucking point?
Bastards.
What's the point of living with this?
Exactly. I mean, I'm stuck with Guinness, but to be fair, that's not a bad thing. I love Guinness.
Hey, it's okay. I mean, especially if it's on tap, draft Guinness. No, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm drinking cans, but that's because I'm committed to it. You see, I'm a certified pint man when it comes to Guinness. So I'll drink it wherever it comes from.
Doing us proud.
Well, I wish I was in Ireland for a pint, but obviously And the pubs are closed there now, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, no, it's an absolute joke. The point outside mine is just fucking. It's been closed for months now. I mean, because certain pubs can be open if they serve food. If they serve food, they have to be open. But
the best ones don't serve food.
That's exactly it. Fucking hell.
That's no point in it, like,
no foreplay, no dicking around. Just straight to the fucking main course.
You don't want the food. You don't want. I mean, you get crips and that's it. Nothing else.
Yeah, but you want a few chips maybe when you're locked.
And that's I mean, it's just to sort the palate out so you can have more pints.
Yeah. This is it exactly. Yeah. Speaking of which,
you got to plan this through.
I'm feeling properly ropey though, because yesterday, we're getting off track now for the GDR. But I'll tell you something.
No bother.
Well, I'll tell you something for nothing. My wife and I have decided that we have been. I've got a spare tire on me. You can't see because the camera...
I feel that mood.
We'll call it what do they call it? The COVID kilogram or the COVID 10 kilograms.
That's the one. Yeah.
Call it that.
10 kilograms.
The COVID 10 kg. Yeah. And so we decided that we put on a little bit. We're a little bit more. Let's say lovable. We're a little bit more cuddly than.
You're rounded off now,
Rounded off. This is exactly we are in shape because round is a shape, and why the fuck not?
It is a shape. I mean, no shape is shaped like it's a six pack, is it?
Well, this is
the only shape is round.
Six pack. It's fucking ridiculous. But last night, come here to me. Last night we were like, all right, this is it. This is it. The last cigarette. We're gonna eat a load of junk food.
That sounds fake. That.
last night we decided we'd get chips and instead of getting just like normally we get like one big bag of chips and split them because they're massive bags of chips where we get.
You should get a spice bag.
We got 3.
I love them, mate.
Oh, spice bags are fucking good.
I'm so glad for me.
Fucking
beautiful
spice bags. Anyway,
I wish I could just export them. Sorry.
Oh, they're so fucking good. No, don't get me started on spice bags anyway. But we had 3 bags of chips, 3 fucking bags of chips, and because there was stuff left over, I ended up having it for fucking breakfast and lunch today as well.
Class that. That's the way you
dinner, breakfast, and lunch.
Pizza or something, and that's your breakfast, lunch, and
for the 3 days. You mean it? Oh, fuck's sake! God. And I feel like shite now as well. I was just like, oh Jesus.
But that's the way it should be. You're supposed to feel like shite.
I would feel like shite.
It's a good time, yeah.
No, I should feel like shite on a Saturday. That's the problem. I went in too early.
Well, maybe we'll be feeling like shite tomorrow.
Well,
I mean, I've been on session for the last 3 days. So.
Well, I will say is vodka. Vodka is the key. Vodka, you don't get a hangover. I don't know what the fuck.
It's magic.
It's just
magic stuff.
Magical stuff.
But the thing is, it nearly killed me one time, so I decided to stay off that.
Well, that happened to me when I was about 17 or 18 as well, and I was just drinking shoulders. Wait, do you have that? I'm not sure if you say that. We say naggins and shoulders and that, like in terms of measurements. Do you say that over there?
No, we don't say that.
You don't say that. No. I think a naggin is about 200 milliliters. 200 milliliters, and a shoulder of vodka would be about 350 milliliters.
You see, I don't measure by milliliters.
Oh, you don't do measure.
It's just bottle, you see. So it's just like, yeah.
Okay, well, let me see. Naggin is the small little bottle, not the tiny little one that looks like a shot, but like the next level up.
Kind of like it's more like a hip flask.
Flask. Yeah, that's the one. That's a naggin. We said that's a naggin. And then next up, like a huge, like a fucking Hulk version of that.
The Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, yeah. That's 350 milliliters, probably like half. That's probably like half a litre or something like that. I was just chugging those fuckers back. when I was about 17 or 18. And as you're sort of referring to as well, I started vomiting up me. Everything, and I couldn't go back. Like just even the taste of vodka would just completely, just the smell of it, even the fucking smell of it would just turn my stomach, and I'd just be gone. I'd just be out the door. I couldn't.
That happened to me as well because me and a French comrade, I think we actually had I think it was a litre bottle of vodka. We had a fucking massive one,
a litre,
and we got through the whole thing in one night.
Fuck's sake, lads! I've got a litre right here.
It killed me.
People can see that in the chat. You can have a look there. That's my little.
Get it down, you lad.
I'm working on it. I'm not that far. I'm not too far. I'm only about a fifth or a quarter of the way through it. So
I want to see a little bit more gone by the end of this. You see, so work on it, mate.
I'm working on it. Oh,
but no. Then there was this disgusting thing I had when I was on holiday in Turkey. Yeah, it's called raki, right?
Raki, and
it's this thing that when you drink it, it leaves little crystals in your body. So the more you drink, these crystals dissolve, and it's like pure alcohol. Jeez. So you just get drunk. So you have the first one, you're like, oh, I'm fine, I'll have another one. And I'll have another one. And maybe another one.
And then
but then you just hit this point, blackout, gone, you're out, you're dead. So I was found on the floor in puddles of my own puke.
Jeez.
And it's not a proud moment. And then, but I think because I got rid of it all, the next day I didn't have the nasty after effects where you wake up, you have a glass of water and you're drunk again.
That's great.
That's what it does to you. It stays in you, But no, I just had to suffer with the hangover for the whole day, so...
That's like that thing. But that reminds me of that thing. Like, have you been to Amsterdam?
No, I haven't. But it's
Oh,
one of the
lucky
things
you.
I want to do.
Whenever you go there and you eat those fucking muffins, it's about 3 hours before they kick in, and you think that nothing's
Funny
happening.
muffins.
The funny muffins, yeah, space
The
muffins,
funny muffins.
space cakes.
Muffins. They take you to space.
Send you to the moon, yeah. You go
That's
there,
it, yeah.
and it takes you about fucking 3
I'm
hours
back.
before they kick in, and so it's like an hour or two before they kicked in, and you're just like, all right, that's not doing it, and I'll just have about 5 more.
That's the dangerous thing, isn't it? It's a slow effect, isn't
They
it?
kick in the next day.
Fine, look at me, I'm solid.
Oh.
I can handle this.
Then it's about 12 hours later, and you're just trying to use the jacks, and suddenly your Mickey's in your hand, and then suddenly time and space start to separate.
The fucking galaxy brain goes.
The galaxy
like, out of body
explodes
experience.
in front of you.
You see the brain size to inflate. It's becoming an armchair as well. That you
Doom
can sit on.
doom 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 doom.
Oh jeez, the fucking the Sim starts playing as well.
Out of the season.
Oh my god.
Oh, for fuck's sake, yeah, or like what's that fucking song? Sunshine of Your Love starts playing.
Yeah. That's the way that.
You're just like, what the fuck's
We
going on?
need a space muffin stream.
It'll have to be a lot longer than 3 hours. I swear to God, I'll probably have to have the muffin like the day before, and then hope it's kicked in by the time the stream.
Maybe that's the 24-hour stream for when you hit 50K. I reckon that's the way to go.
Just be sitting here playing Sunshine of Your Love, just humming Sunshine of Your Love
Over and over again. It doesn't stop.
All right, here we go. Back on topic. Aaron Nambiar is asking.
Serious business.
Serious business. Back on topic, mates.
Business
Please.
round here.
Yeah.
We
apologies,
never go off
Cameron.
topic.
All right, that was the interlude. I hope you all used the bathroom. I hope you all went to the Jacks.
Yeah, that was time to go for a while, so I hope you've expended your voucher now. It's time to get back to serious socialist talk.
All right, back to business.
It's a well-known fact that communists don't jump. Shit.
Oh my God, we don't fuck around. We never fuck around.
Never.
No.
Never would.
No.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to jump into Honecker. Is that right?
I just wanted to finish off about Honecker's policies.
Please.
That's all right.
Let's go into Honecker. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was obviously talking about the unity of economic and social policy. There's also another one as well. He had this idea called cyber socialism, which meant a massive development into the electronic, chemical, and plastic industries. Again, trying to develop the technology in the East, to be on par with the West as well. And you also see a lot of technological developments across the socialist countries. I mean, you only need to talk about Yuri Gagarin, a space program as well, to see that socialist countries can innovate. There's always this thing that, you can't innovate in socialism because we don't have these fucking Jeff Bezos types or Elon Musk and that. But it's like, what was the first country to put someone into space? And also in space. And the only German in space, I think, to this day, he died. Sigmund Jähn. And he was in East Germany because he was the first German in space, taking part in the Soviet. I think they called it Intercosmos, and the Proles pod descendant, Invent the Future, did a brilliant podcast about Intercosmos, and I would strongly recommend that to anyone.
The Proles Roundtable, was it?
Yeah, well, you know how obviously they disbanded, sadly, didn't it? It's, I cry about it every single day.
I know, it's tragic.
Fucking
hipster craft beer.
I only turn to Max, and I mean, I love a bit of craft beer every now and then.
Me too, but
I don't think I'm pretentious enough to have it. Or start my own brewery. I don't think I have the baby in that.
Yeah.
I don't have that going for me. Obviously, they've started a new podcast now about the ones that were splitters, revisionists, called Invent the Future, and I'll strongly recommend that. It's a good podcast. Yeah, it's well worth looking at. I think they've only got 4 episodes so far.
Add that to the list.
But again, it's worth listening to. Anyway, I was talking about cyber socialism and how fucking incredible it sounds. Yeah, and then this was also, all these new policies as well were also taking place in the context of something called, I can't speak French, but I think it's called détente, or something like that. It basically means de-escalation of the Cold War. So I believe it was from 1972, there was much more kind of peaceful relations between the West and the East. And the West actually, for the first time, kind of semi-recognized the East. Not as an equal nation, but they didn't have an embassy between each other. But it was something called like a working, some kind of working office that they had in the West, in Bonn. So, this was a breakthrough as well. It meant that the countries could stop investing in the military so much, and again, divert a lot of those resources towards the people. It's a shame that by the 1980s, this context of peace had gone away. You know, the arms industry was back up and running again. But yeah, the 70s were very good times for East Germans. You know, the economy was booming, consumer demands were being met, and it was just generally a decent time. And that's the time that a lot of people look back on when they look back on East Germany, is that time of economic growth, of the development of the planned economy, and the achievements that were being made in science as well. So yeah, that's basically all I've got to say about Honecker's policies. But just quickly about the man, I didn't make any notes about this, but he's a really interesting guy. I believe he was born in 1912, and he was a member of the Spartacus League, which was the kind of precursor to the Communist Party in 1919. So, I believe he was 10 when he joined the Communist Party, and he was 14 when he first took a major part in the Young Communist League in Germany. So he was kind of like a lifelong communist. His dad was a miner and a socialist and a trade unionist. And he was, interestingly, he was actually born as well in the most westernly part of Germany, which is quite ironic, you know, so he became leader of East Germany. Yeah. And he always had this really thick West German accent. You know, if you have an ear to it, oh God, I've ruined the head on this as well. No, if you have an ear to German accents, it's quite interesting to listen to it. But yeah, he was imprisoned when Hitler came to power in 1933 again, and he was also put into a concentration camp. Throughout the war, he survived the war, obviously, and he was liberated by the Soviet army. And he struck a friendship with Walter Ulbricht. They called it the Ulbricht Group, which was kind of like the formation of the Communist Party again. And he was a major part in developing the Free German Youth, which was the youth wing of the Communist Party, and it's kind of like a Scouts, but less imperialistic and not founded by a nonce. You know,
all benefits.
So yeah, a few things here and there. It's all right, isn't it? But no, he's definitely a really interesting character. And I would want to read a lot more about him as well. But again, the sources are really hard to find on him, because you either get the bourgeois view that shits on him at every fucking point, or you get, or they're all in German, and they're quite hard to find in German. So he does have one bit that I think is in English, and it's called Find That Online. It's his autobiography, which is done as part of a series for leaders of the war. So he wrote his own autobiography, and that's really interesting to read. But a lot of his theory is he's kind of lost to history in a way. It's just not available anywhere. So you can't really find a lot out about the man. But by the time he came to power, he was quite old as well, and that was one of the main critiques about him as well. He was seen to be a little bit out of touch by the late 1980s, and that's one of the major problems with the East German leadership as well, is that they were very old. There wasn't that kind of acceptance into top party circles of people that had grown up in the GDR. You know, a lot of the leadership were those that endured the German Empire in the First World War, endured the Weimar Republic, and obviously the oppression under Hitler. And you see this theme as well in the GDR. A lot of old people really loved the GDR because it got rid of that poverty of their youth and that uncertainty. You know, you've got to bear in mind as well that in the early 1920s, in the late 1920s as well, actually, when it came to the Wall Street crash, Germany's economy was down the shitter. Yeah, you know, they had the hyperinflation where they were using money to fucking wallpaper their walls and that. You know, it just wasn't worth anything. They were burning it on, you know, for fuel. Yeah. And the GDR got rid of that desperation that came from the end of the First World War in Germany, and it put people back on their feet. They gave them a job and all the basic things you need for life. And so many people just appreciated that, and they loved that as well. It was when you get to the people that were born in the GDR, and I guess in a way didn't know they're born. You know, they didn't know how shit life can be outside of socialism. Yeah. You know, and I'll talk about that in a bit, because I'm going to talk about the downfall of the GDR. Yeah. But if there's any questions, I'll happily answer there. No, cheers, everyone. I'm going to take a first sip at the pint.
Absolutely, enjoy. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. There's Do you know? I think what it is that there's a little bit of a lag between when we're
is there?
talking. Yeah, when we're talking and when the people in the chat are asking questions. So
Can you hear me in real time then?
it's probably like about 10 or 15, maybe 15, 20 seconds actually behind. So when you
All right, sound.
ask them to give questions, it takes a moment for people to ask about this particular topic.
We're in real time though, aren't we? I mean, you talking.
You and I are in real time. Yeah, there's no lag between the two of us. Anyway.
Yeah, trying to talk to people through Google Meets and that. I've had this weird 30-second delay.
Yeah.
In terms of me talking, them hearing. I guess there's that. At least it's working somehow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great because when there is that lag, it's really awkward because you'll think somebody's
a little bit.
You'll think that people have left like a moment for you to sort of talk and for you to jump in the conversation, and then you'll be actually talking over them, and it just is really, really awkward when you're trying to have that.
It is, yeah. I mean, you end up sitting there as well, like, staring at each other, like, have you heard what I just said, or are you just waiting for me to say something? And by the time I've said, "Can you hear me?"
They're already on something else.
Their end.
This is
so
it.
It's so weird, yeah. Wi-Fi shite, like,
fucking
obviously
Wi-Fi.
we're stuck with PlusNet here. I don't.
Ethernet cables make all of the difference. Seriously, just plugging in an Ethernet cable, just hooking up directly to the box, made all the difference in the world. For often when I have guests as well. Oh no, you're the internet went just there, did it?
Yeah, I just got a call from my dad. So,
okay, right, yeah,
a different I'll get back to him, but I didn't know if it disconnected me or something.
It was quiet for a second, but I think it's okay. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, it's because
it's happened a few times before where guests are just like the internet isn't working at all, and then as soon as they plug into the Ethernet cable, just straight away everything's perfect.
Yeah, I wish I had an Ethernet cable, but there's just
like £5 or something like that. It's worth.
Oh no, I have the cable. I just don't have anywhere to plug it into. That's the problem. Because I'm living in a student house in Sheffield. It's kind of like.
Do you know what you can do?
Houses, yeah.
What I have
I just kind of dox myself there, but it's fine.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do, and this is what I do, is there's a little plug. I'll send a little link to you after the chat, but there's a little plug that you can do, and it'll send it sends the internet through your electricity to the electricity that goes through through your apartment or through your house or whatever it might be, and so you can literally just put it into the nearest plug to you, and then you can plug your Ethernet cable into this little adapter. TP-Link adapters. Yeah, it's actually dead. I have no idea how it works. It seems to be some sort of
magic and science,
weird magic,
like
internet magic.
They probably do some kind of ritual to Satan or something to like make it work, the normal things. Send the link over to that. I'll be very happy.
I'll pop that over to you after. Just remind me afterwards, because
I will do. Yeah, because the Wi-Fi's.
It's really helpful. That's what I use, and it makes a big difference. Community. Oh, I see Berrimans has asked a question here. Berrimans, thank you very much for the super chat, comrade. Does Swann know more about censorship of the arts and artists in the GDR? And
I'll talk about that later. Don't worry.
Let me see. Villa Cruz aus Belgien Prosit. I can't pronounce that. I'm not sure.
Villa Cruz Genosse.
Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense.
It means good greetings to you from Belgium.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you very much, Berrimans. Yeah. Great comrade. So you're going to talk a little bit about that later on, okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the arts, and we have a question lined up as well, don't we, about positive and negative. So
yeah,
I'm going to talk about the arts. There was censorship, but there was also a big flourishing as well. It's kind of two sides, again, it's an interesting situation. So I'll get onto that. If that's okay, if I go back to that later.
Yeah, we'll come back to these things as we get to your top. I think
if you make a note of it.
I'll come back. I'll make a little note of it here, and then we'll come back to that a little bit later. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I think we probably will have to push forward a little bit more with the questions, because we're coming up to 2 hours now, and
bloody hell,
we have a lot to get through.
I've got this final section of history, which is just the downfall of the GDR, so I can cover that. We're finishing off now with the context, so we can get into how it actually functioned and.
Yeah, the work and the democracy.
Enjoy Socialism a little bit, yeah.
Great.
So after the downfall, I want to cover why it happened first. Again, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there's very much a growing frustration towards an aging leadership. And it was, although there were measures taken in the 70s and the early 80s to do more localised planning and governing, by the late 80s, it started to be centralised again. So it means all the decisions were starting to be made in Berlin again, which means that the I believe they call them the Bezirke, which is like kind of district in German, got a little bit pissed off. They didn't have as much of a say in their own affairs. And the kind of the democratic aspects that we're going to cover later became a bit more ritualized towards the end of the 1980s, and they kind of lost their character, as in that people were just kind of going through the motions rather than actually taking an active say in their own life. And again, that probably also comes with the age of leadership as well. And this led to a growth in pro-democracy movements in 1989. So they're celebrating the 40th year of the GDR in 1989. And a few weeks later, Honecker was forced to resign because of the growing tension from below to reform socialism. You know, bring back those democratic elements, restore what was great about socialism in the 70s. And that's what a lot of these people were demanding. If you actually look I was walking around the German Historical Museum when I was in Berlin a few years back. I didn't know anything about the GDR then at all. But there was a sign that really stood out for me. And it was saying, socialism, yes, egoism, no. Which is just like, it just shows that a lot of the people that were marching in these protests weren't looking for the end of socialism. They were looking for its reform. You know, they never, all these people grew up never knowing a united capitalist Germany. Yeah. So that barely ever crossed their minds. You know, they were always looking for the reform of socialism in their own country. But yeah, also another cause of the downfall of the GDR was that the economy had started to contract a lot as well by the 80s. There was global recessions because of the oil crisis. And Gorbachev, friend of the channel, decided that he wouldn't want to support the Socialist bloc anymore, and he saw that Germany was a lost cause. So he cut off the subsidised trade of East Germany, specifically oil as well, which is crucial. You know, you need to power your industry somehow. So Gorbachev cut all that off in his infinite wisdom. You can see videos as well of him, actually. He's at all these events, and they start singing the Internationale. And you can tell all the East German leaders are singing it with pride and passion. And Gorbachev just kind of like mumbling the words as if he just don't care at all. So, you know, that's a fun little factoid about him. You know, he clearly just did not care. But yeah, all these factors that I just talked about, the economic recession, the pro-democracy movements, and the centralisation and lack of democracy in East Germany by the end, obviously led to the fall of the wall in November 1989. And the kind of key catalyst for that was where pressure had been surmounting, and a minister on live TV was talking about new travel regulations, and he was asked. He said that he was asked, when are these travel regulations going to come in, and he said, in kind of like a moment of stupidity, he's there fumbling through his notes, and he was like, the borders will open immediately. There, boom, and he just left it. He left the meeting there. So you have thousands of people flooding to the border checkpoints, and the border guard has just stood there like, what the fuck's going on? We have not been told anything.
What do we do?
You know, what's going on? There was just so many people, they just let them through in the end. Christ. And that's when the wall got torn down. Yeah, they just, because, you know, again, they called it the peaceful revolution, because it really was, you know. Yeah. It was people organising as themselves to, with the end, they wanted to reform of socialism. I think that has to be stated. You know,
rather
just a sign,
than capitalism, yeah.
Rather than capitalist restoration. That was never the demand. Yeah. And I'll get into why that came through. So the wall fell, and free, I say in quotation marks, if I had a video, you would see the big area I'm putting into this. Free elections were declared in 1990. Yeah. And they were so free that the West funneled in 7.5 million marks into parties that were pro-West.
Wow. Super free.
And half of super free. You know, I mean, no, obviously,
National Endowment for Democracy free.
Exactly, yeah. The GDR was so autocratic and totalitarian that it didn't allow donations towards election campaigns.
How ridiculous.
Whereas the West loves that. You know, freedom is when private companies decide policy.
Yeah.
That's freedom.
Freedom for capitalists.
Exactly. So yeah, so obviously with all this funding, and you had the Chancellor at the time, Helmut Kohl, he was touring the East, giving speeches, talking about our reunification. And this was just kind of like this broad idea at the time. A lot of people were thinking that, yeah, reunification isn't something that's going to happen soon. It's going to take decades, because the shift from a planned economy to a market economy would be brutal over a short amount of time. And it was. We've seen that everywhere. So yeah, what happened in the election was that the so-called Alliance for Germany, the West-backed parties, won 49% of the vote in this election. And the newly formed, they called it the Party for Democratic Socialism, which was basically the old SED, actually won 14% of the vote as well. So there wasn't really an absolute majority for the West. You know, it was just kind of just off. So from that, based on that result, reunification was rushed through. Again, like I said, the experts said it would take decades, but Helmut Kohl, who was the Chancellor of Germany, of West Germany, he was about to face an election as well, and he wanted to raise his popularity. So he thought the way to do that would be to reunify Germany as soon as possible. And he did that in 11 months. You know, from the fall of the wall to reunification was 11 months, when people were saying it'll be decades. So you have this kind of situation there. And I just want to kind of explore why East Germans actually voted for reunification as well. There was a referendum towards the end of it. But again, there was that Western backing into it. And they'd also been sold that utopian vision of the West. You know, the grass is green on the other side kind of thing.
Of course,
They assume that they'll keep their right to work and housing and subsidised rent and food prices. Yep. And they just really could not be more mistaken in that respect.
You know, former Yugoslavia as well, the same
exactly thing. Yeah, it happened all over the shop. Yeah, and now I just kind of want to finish off talking about what I call the annexation of Germany. It wasn't a reunification; it was a forceful occupation by the West, and that's because the first measure was a currency union, which meant that the East German currency was devalued. It was deemed to be 500% less valuable than the Western Deutschmark. Yeah, which when they did this currency union, it absolutely destroyed the internal market of the East. It just meant that unification would be inevitable. So what was set up, there was this thing called the Treuhand, which is kind of the trustful hand, which was there originally under the reformed East German government there to secure as many jobs as possible. But when the Conservatives won the election, they did the exact opposite. So it was basically an asset stripping process. So there were 12,000 people's-owned enterprises in East Germany with 4 million employees in them. And the economy was valued at 650 billion marks, which is, nothing to, it's not that bad. It's all right. And this meant that, and because these workers owned a stake in their own business, it meant that every single citizen of the GDR actually held 40,000 marks in assets because, they were publicly owned. But the Conservative government just said, that doesn't matter. They would disregard the people's right to property, and they seized it all with no compensation to the people whatsoever. Wow. And then from there, they privatised it all, every single thing. So industries are worth millions of pounds. As an example of a steelworks that was worth 250 million marks being sold for 1 mark. Just want to let that sink in. 1 mark.
Wow.
And this happened all over the shop, everywhere. So their excuse was that the economy wasn't viable. But it really was, because they had modern machinery. And to prove they had modern machinery, most of this machinery was sent to the West to be used by Western companies, in which they bought for 1 mark. So they had 3,400 factories, 520 construction companies, 465 state farms, and millions of hectares, I think that's how you say it, and thousands of smaller companies were privatised and sold off for next to nothing. The air travel industry, the shipbuilding industry, which had flourished in the GDR, home appliance manufacturing, the textile, so many other sectors were demolished overnight. The number of jobs in manufacturing fell by 75%, and by 1991, 1/3 of East Germans were unemployed, and that used to be next to zero.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury as well, former Nazi landowners were allowed to buy back the land that had been expropriated from them back in the 40s for 40% of its real price.
40%.
40% of what it was actually worth.
Wow.
And then just to show how much of an annexation this was, the newly privatized East German economy, the CEOs, 80% of them were West German and only 5% of them were East German. 4 out of 10 young people emigrate from the East because of no job prospects whatsoever. And that's probably why you have this new rising racism.
Yeah.
Because right now, the former GDR has 7%, whereas the rest of Germany has an unemployment rate of about 3% or something like that.
Right, okay.
And the far right have preyed on this area so much because the left has capitulated and the West clearly didn't give a shit about them. And like I said earlier, 57% of East Germans feel like second-class citizens. And only 37% of them see unification as a success. And this drops to 20% of those that are under 40.
Wow.
So the far right has leached on these areas, and they've said the problem isn't the West and the capitalist restoration. It's your immigrant neighbour. Sort him out. Not the ones that are above you. So that's why we get the AFD.
Yeah.
Because these people are living in desperation right now. The only profitable parts of East Germany are small little pockets in Berlin and Saxony. Everywhere else is being swept over by the far right. And I think that is a massive tragedy. And anyone that dares to say the lie that capitalist restoration brought freedom, economic freedom, and prosperity to East Germans is chatting out their arse.
Absolutely. Jesus Christ. Powerful words, heavy and intense words as well. Jesus. It's really sad hearing about the fall of any of these socialist projects, and especially when they give way to such a rise in support for the far right, as we've seen. And actually, that might lead into a couple of the questions that have been asked before.
Do you mind if I go for a while quickly, comrade?
Of course.
I've been on it for a while. So.
Fair play. No, you got to 2 hours and you didn't go. So go on ahead. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Right, I'll be quick, right? Yeah, so entertain the child, obviously.
Absolutely. How he's getting on, Chad? Entertain. Okay, well, we got to do some juggling or something like that. How he's getting on? Jays, we got fucking about 10, 12, 13 questions to get through already. Jesus Christ, how he's getting on, comrades? He's all doing well. It is going to be interesting because now we're going to jump into the sort of discussions of democracy in the GDR. We're going to discuss about work and the socialist workplace in the GDR, and we're going to talk about the achievements of the GDR as well as we're going to address some of the criticisms of the GDR as well, because especially if you're in certain sections of the left, a lot of people will just sort of very much throw this whole experiment away. They'll say it's revisionist. They'll say Honecker's revisionist. And there's some truth to these sorts of claims as well as we get a little bit later into the historical development of the GDR. I think especially sort of post 1981, it very much oriented itself towards the market, which would give way to capitalism a little bit later on. But other people would say that it was always this terrible revisionist state, that because it aligned itself with the USSR and the Khrushchevites and so on and so forth, that we can just throw it away. But I think there are still important things to learn from this experiment in socialism. So yeah, I see a few more questions here in the chat. Anthony Gloria, what's GDR? GDR is the German Democratic
Right, I'm
Republic.
back, comrades.
How are you, comrade? Good to see you.
I'm fine now, yeah. I'm
I feel better.
back on the pints. Oh, I'm fine now, yeah. I can sit my butt comfortable, like, you know.
Great. That's what we want. We want people to be comfortable, relaxed.
Ah, yeah.
Have a massage there while you're... Armchair.
Oh, I'd love that.
Let's talk about Bordiga.
State man. Oh, I'm not ready for that discourse. There's a ban on that discourse, comrade. We're not talking about that anymore.
Revisionism, abolish the value form.
Do it immediately. No regard for material condition. Zooming down the fucking
armchair, fucking zooming down.
A drag race on your armchair.
Oh my god, I fucking loved
fucking
that.
Soups up.
Oh my god, that was so fucking funny.
Oh, that was hilarious when you were posting that.
Oh,
Jesus.
Armchair gang, rise up.
Oh, the thing is though, as well, all the universities in the country as well, as a group called the INT. They're like a Trotskyist party.
Yeah, I know, I heard
like,
them, yeah.
Oh, you know, that socialist appeal kind of thing. I don't know if they have an equivalent in Ireland, but like, they're very much armchairists.
Yeah,
you know, like they're very deep into their Marxist.
It's easy, isn't it? Your man.
It's like fair enough. Like you can be into your Marxist like you should know stuff as well, but you have to bear in mind that crucial phrase of the philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point, however, is to change it. And if you're not engaging in these movements, if you just make your ideology a kind of intellectual hobby in a way, you're not going to achieve anything. It's not fucking worth your time. It's not worth anyone's time. Join your union, join your Communist Party, and do something.
This is it, 100%. You need to fucking get out there. As you said, the points of the philosophers of the world have thus far only interpreted. The point is to change it. You know, that's that old Marx quote. I'm not reading it word for word.
That was actually put up as well at the Humboldt University in East Berlin. That was inscribed as you walked into it. That was there. Those words. So, you know. Oh, and also as well, they sacked all the fucking intellectuals as well, right, in East Germany.
Really?
Just talking again quickly, yeah. Yeah, so they accused them all of saying they were ideologically trained, so their education was worth nothing.
Okay, bourgeois intellectuals,
yeah. No, I mean East German university professors and teachers, yeah, when reunification happened, they were all sacked because obviously a lot of them had been taught in Marxist theory and they were accused of having subpar education. So they sacked them all and they moved these West German professors into East German universities. And it was just this massive gutting of the universities and the culture sector as well, because they were deemed to be too ideological. And there was also accusation as well that they were all Stasi agents, which was mostly not true. But again, we'll talk about the Stasi in time. You know, I don't want to talk about the Stasi so much because they're always talked about, but obviously they are crucial as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to people's lived experiences as well, it's not the Stasi they remember. You know, it's always it's nearly everything else. So.
That's right, yeah. And you don't hear about everything else, unfortunately. So this is what we're here for. This is what we're here for, filling in those gaps. So brilliant.
But it's kind of bending the stick in a way as well. You know, you got the discourse on East Germany is so thwarted towards the West. You know, you only talk about the wall of the Stasi. You kind of got to bend the stick in a way to be much more in favour of it. And I think that applies to a lot of modern socialist countries as well. Because if you buy into criticisms of these places in the West, that fundamentally means nothing. Because the only way you change society in these countries from the West is by invading them. You know, if you have these so-called principles with critiques of, say, Cuba or something, and you voice them into the ether outside of your Communist Party, that just gives a left-wing excuse for imperialism. And that's one of my main problems with the Trotskyist parties as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there is a time and place for these kinds of criticisms, but unfortunately, supporting liberal attacks on them is not. And especially
have them amongst comrades and in your Communist Party.
This is it. Have them amongst the comrades in your own circles. Don't do it when fucking Venezuela's under attack by imperialism, or don't do it at that moment. This is not the time for your fucking principles take.
Oh my god!
Fuck off, mate.
They're all fucking state capitalism.
You know, it's this bollocks as well. It's the same fucking thing that happened with Belarus as well recently. Like, now everybody has a fucking take on Belarus. Now everybody has a fucking take.
Your voice doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry.
Fuck's sake.
It doesn't.
If they wanted to talk, you know, a year ago when there wasn't that much excitement going on, fair enough. If you want to give your take and you want to just say that it's a social democratic country that's not actually left wing, so that's fine. That's fair. And it's pretty much true.
Fair enough.
It is. It's basically a social democracy, you know. But it's grand. But
it's not a Soviet republic or anything.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's just your take on it right now when it's under
attack.
Colour revolution. It's worth nothing.
And it doesn't help anyone.
Don't fucking bother.
It doesn't help anyone. And definitely doesn't help the fucking left. It doesn't help socialism.
No.
Anyway.
But when you have the Communist Party in Belarus as well, I listen to the Communist Party of these countries because they know
this is it. Yeah.
What's actually happening on the ground. Yes, they have the critiques, but they have that in their space, and they recognise when they're under attack from the imperialists, you have to rally around him.
Support them under attack. Yeah, absolutely.
Because otherwise, what would happen is exactly what I just described in East Germany. That would happen in Belarus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, you have to see the threat that capitalist restoration poses to these places, it isn't fucking nice.
This is it, exactly. You know? This nice cozy social democracy with free healthcare, free education, all these things, that's gone. I mean, all of the people who are leading the recent protests in Belarus are far further to the right than anybody who's in charge right now. You know,
well, even the fact
so on and so forth. So, but even if it is social democracy,
sorry, I'm swearing a bit. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, even the fact that they use the flag from the Nazi collaborationist regime.
That's right, the white and red.
That's a joke. That surely, come on.
Yeah. No, it's an absolute joke. Absolute joke. Anyway, come here to me. We're getting off track again as we are. This is what happens when we have our drinks in hands, and for our sober comrades, I'm sure this is less.
This is why we recommend getting the pints in hand. Come on.
This is why you need to have a pint in hand to enjoy this. So good stuff. So come here to me. Will we do a few questions? We've got a big list of questions to get through here. We'll jump through a few of them.
Excellent.
There's a couple on democracy. We're going to jump into democracy in a moment. We'll come back to that in a second. We'll come back to the one on work. Let me just see. Will we address the ones on with regard to like the sort of social stuff? Will we address those now? Will we, with regard to like the racism and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I can talk about race.
Okay, so Lee has asked, could you go into detail on racism in the GDR? I've seen some articles that paint the DDR as xenophobic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can talk about that. So, the idea that the GDR was racist comes from this idea that's called, I can't remember the exact name of it. I think it's called like socialist chromatism or something like that. It's the idea that they, in theory, represent equality when it comes to race relations and that. But the imagery they use is kind of with a Western bias to it. So the art that they use, they have a lot of art, loads of art, propaganda of what they called the three great races, yeah? So those white, black, and they called it yellow. It's very problematic. But we also have to bear in mind this was the 50s and 60s and so on. So, basically, white, black, and Asian people. And the stereotypes in a way. So, black people had very accentuated features. Asian people were kind of wearing traditional dress, what you might call. And white people were always in the centre of it. So that's where the idea that East Germany was racist comes from. And I guess that is rooted in white supremacy in a way, They were trying to present anti-racism, but they also kind of fell into racist norms, if that makes sense. So again, the white man was always in the centre of it. But in terms of material help as well, I think the GDR wasn't racist as well. Like, it wasn't institutionally racist because they definitely welcomed the Vietnamese migrants to come to East Germany and build up the country. They held numerous international events. They were quite famous, and Erich Honecker was a big part of this, for founding the... it still happens now, I can't remember his exact name. It's something like the International Festival of Youth. Yeah, so you have all the youth wings of the Communist parties coming to socialist countries to celebrate, have parades and stuff. And Angela Davies was one of these as well, actually. She went to a few of them, I think, actually. Yeah, there's loads of pictures of her. Cool. There's actually speeches of her as well. There's speeches of her in Berlin and in Leipzig of her, speaking in the GDR and talking about socialism. There's pictures of her shaking hands with Erich Honecker and other government ministers. She's also there with Erich Mielke, who was the head of the Stasi. She was very much involved in that. There was a big focus on socialist internationalism in the GDR. There was the rhetoric of the defence of the socialist homeland and for the friendship of the international peoples. Yeah, you have a lot in these countries. So I guess the imagery that they used was racist in a way. Yeah. I definitely accept that. But again, you kind of have to look at what they were actually doing as well. They were also sending troops and military support to anti-colonial struggles as well. East Germany was deemed to have the most professionally trained and best army in the world. And they were sending their military advisors, helping out anti-imperialist struggles, and they were also doing. Cuba was sending fighters to these same areas as well. So the only socialist countries that really actively engaged in internationalism on that front of material military CDR. And that's something that really stands out to me. So
it's really important, but I do know what you mean though. It is a little bit awkward because all right, let's say you're going somewhere where there was anti-Irish sentiment. I feel like I can talk about this, but just as a point of reference, so if there was an anti-Irish sentiment thing issue in London or something like that, and someone put up a poster and it was be nice to the Irish people, and there's a picture of someone from London, and then an Irish person depicted as a leprechaun or something like that with a whiskey in the hand or something, just a little rainbow behind a pot of gold, just talking shit, all this sort of stuff. You can see that there are problems with the representation, but they're still they're kind of trying to go in the right direction, even though they're coming from this sort of oppressive past.
And I guess maybe it isn't my place to speak about that as well as someone who's from Britain.
This is it.
I guess it's not. My opinion doesn't matter, but I guess as well the imagery that you used wasn't quite as problematic as the leprechaun example and stuff. But they use the accentuation of like they say that black people are being that kind of thing. Kind of thing. But they're kind of presenting like like socialist realism. We have that kind of the heroic worker and stuff. Features are very defined. It's kind of that route rather than like a stereotype that you might see in like a Disney cartoon from the 1930s or something.
Jesus,
It wasn't. It was nowhere near as bad as that. But it was definitely there. And again, maybe it's not my place to talk about that, and I completely understand, and I don't have the correct kind of understanding of the vocabulary to talk. All I can really talk about is the material support of the GDR to the anti-imperialist struggles and the internationalism that it did in practice as well. So that's all. Any other kind of interpretation, I'm happy for other comics to talk about.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Let's push on now. Another question we have from the Q&A that we should deal with now, sort of on dealing with these kind of social issues. Could you ask, this is Carlos has asked, could you ask Comrade Swann about gender and sexuality rights in the DDR? This is tough. It's tough because it's a different time, and it's hard to judge it by 2020, and you're trying to judge something like 1949.
Can I just get my notes up about this quickly, because I'm always
you have something
so early, but I've just got my notes here. I'm quite happy to say that gender equality in the GDR was very highly progressive there. So from the moment it was founded, the equality between genders was enshrined in the constitution, and they didn't just say that in theory; it was acted in practice as well. So pay differentials were completely abolished. Free childcare was introduced as well, which allowed women to continue their careers at work because they were fully embraced into the workforce. So it meant the free childcare meant that you didn't have to sacrifice your career. It also meant as well. My notes are a bit disorganized on this topic. I wasn't expecting to.
No, you're okay. You're okay. And we're probably going to talk a little bit about more about it later as well.
Yeah. Well, if I talk about it in detail now, I can kind of later, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when it came to births as well, whenever someone had a child, they were instantly given 1,000 marks for that year. Just paid it. There you go. Boom. Money. And if you had a second child, you were gifted, I believe it was 2,000 marks. And if you had a third child, I believe it was 5,000 marks. And if you had more than 3 children, it was 7,500 marks that you were given per child. So you were directly given that support to obviously, fund childcare and that. But, looking after your child, raising a family. And the GDR was very progressive in this respect as well, because it also had a really generous maternity pay as well. So I believe from the start, you could get paid 90% of your salary from 14 weeks to begin with. This was then bumped up to 18 weeks after the birth. And then by 1976, you had paid maternity leave for 26 weeks. And this was also maternity leave as well, 3 weeks before you had the child as well. So it was very progressive.
Very much so, yeah.
Maternity pay. And by the end as well, this was it was boosted up to the full wage as well. So it wasn't 9%, it was the full wage that you got. And you was also guaranteed as well to get your job when you get your maternity pay. It was illegal to fire someone because they had a child. And that never happened. Whereas, say, in the West, you can have this so-called ban on firing people because they've had a child, but they always found another reason, they always find another way to get around it. So to say that you're not viable anymore or something like that. Yeah. And again, maybe I'm not so qualified to talk about these issues, but I'll try my best here.
Absolutely.
Women also were given the right to divorce as well, very early on. So I don't have an exact. I don't have an exact date there, but I can compare that to the West, where up until 1957, women couldn't work without their partner's permission in the West, and women couldn't work until 1977 if their work got in the way of so-called household duties. Whereas basically from the very start of the GDR, women could just work.
Yeah.
That was it, and they had the childcare to do that.
Yeah.
1972 as well, the GDR legalised abortion, and contraception was made free and which is years ahead of the West in that respect as well, where in the West you could be imprisoned for having abortion. Of course, in the Irish situation as well, that wasn't as well, you know. So there's the GDR kind of led the way there as well.
Plays the trail.
And when it came to LGBT rights as well, that was a much harder struggle, it must be said.
Yeah.
Germany had a very strong, vibrant history of gay rights before the Nazis came about. I mean, if you've seen the film Cabaret, you'll probably know a little bit about the kind of things that were going on there when it came to gay rights and also trans acceptability as well. This was back in the 20s and the 30s. But one of the main critiques I have of the GDR is that officially homosexuality was illegal until 1968. But there was a criminal law reform in 1957, which meant that after that, next to no one was persecuted for being gay or LGBTQ+. So it was very uncommon after that. But the fact that it was up until 1967 for them to actually, make it legal is, not a great thing. But again, comparing that to the West as well,
you need to compare it.
Put this in context.
You need to put it in context. I mean, in Ireland, it was the early 1990s before homosexual relations were decriminalised. You know, it's just ridiculous when you do compare it. I mean,
it is. Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, even with West Germany as well, they only legalised homosexuality the year after because the GDR had already done it. They were still arresting people after 1957. You could be arrested for being gay in West Germany in 1968. Whereas that didn't happen in East Germany. But there was also an anti-gay culture in East Germany as well, up until very late in its life.
Right.
So it was legalised, but it was very stigmatised as well.
Gotcha,
yeah. So it wasn't really shown in popular culture. It was also seen as anti-socialist, which I think is vile. But also, again, bearing in mind of the context as well. But there was also action against this. So students and young people founded something called the Homosexual Interest Group Berlin in 1972. And this was to raise awareness of LGBTQ plus issues and fight for their representation. And they actually won that battle in 1987 when the universal age of consent was brought in. Because before it was illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to have homosexual relations. Yeah. And after that it was legalised. And after that legalisation as well, there was a flourishing of gay culture. So there was new films that were made. There was a film that was called Coming Out, I believe, as well, and the Other Love as well. So it started to become much more accepted towards the late 1980s. So I can give the GDR props there for listening to its people in that respect.
Yeah.
But it's also a great shame as well that it came so late as well. And again, it's about thinking about it dialectically and in context as well. So for its time, it was very progressive, but there was a lot of issues there as well, and that's something we can critique as socialists today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We need to, and we can't just sort of idealize and pretend that it was this perfect world, because
No, definitely,
it was of its time, and it was very progressive for its time, but it was still of its time. So
from modern standards, it obviously looks a bit shitty, but
exactly.
But that was those struggles were won. They were won by struggle as well.
This is it.
Ordinary people fighting for their rights.
This is it, exactly. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Great stuff. Thanks very much for doing that. Can we just talk about the relationship between GDR and a couple of different countries? People have asked for.
Yeah.
Before we proceed any further into sort of the question about democracy and so on and so forth.
Before we get to democracy, do you mind if I get some beer? So I'm happy to answer these questions now, but I've actually ran out of pints.
Go get those points.
Now. I'm happy to answer these questions now, but
Yeah.
Just after I answer them, I'll get the points in.
Then you get the points in. Yeah. Okay, great stuff.
You see, I'm willing to put the people first in this respect. As a true communist.
As a true proletarian internationalist looking
Exactly.
out for the workers.
You should feel honoured that I'm putting the beer before you.
Well, they do. I'm sure your subscriber count has probably quadrupled in the last 10 minutes alone.
The pipe man put the people for the pipes. That must mean something.
Fantastic. Come here to me. Okay, so here's a question. Matthew Jackson asks, what were the relations? Now, I'm not sure, this might be a little bit too specific. I'm not sure if you know anything about this. I don't know anything about this. But do you know what the relations were between the GDR and Israel? Do you know what
Israel? Yeah. Very early on in the GDR, they accepted Israel as a legitimate state. And they were actually taking part as well in the International Festival of Youth. And that, I guess, that also came. We might look back on it and say that was the wrong decision to make.
Yeah.
But I believe the USSR supported Israel as well just after the war.
It did, yeah.
And obviously the GDR did as well. But I think it also had an extra responsibility to support it in a way because of what happened in the Holocaust. Yeah. So to refuse the right of the Jewish people to their own state from a German context would look terrible. Yeah. You have to recognise that. And yeah, we might look back nowadays with that anti-imperialist context and obviously say, Israel is not a legitimate state, that kind of thing. But looking back on that time, East Germany was presenting itself as the anti-fascist state, and it wanted to accommodate Jewish people as much as possible. So I believe later on, relations with Israel kind of severed as well. Again, looking at the Halstein Doctrine, where Israel didn't recognise East Germany. We have to refer back to the fact that East Germany was isolated. In the early years, there was quite a fraternal relationship with Israel. And again, we can critique that. But because of that Western doctrine, that was forcibly severed. Yeah. I don't think the GDR forgot that as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And speaking of relationships with other countries as well, do you know anything about this particular topic? A few different countries. That Honockerist asks, what does Swann think of the relationship between the DDR, Cuba, and the DPRK?
Yeah, there was a very close relationship between those countries. Fidel Castro travelled to East Germany. I think he actually went 3 times. And there's the video on YouTube actually you can watch with English subtitles of him making speeches, because he did tours across the country and he spoke, and there's massive crowds of the Free German youth and other German citizens in these areas waving pictures of Che, the Cuban flag, and Castro as well. There was a very close relationship between the GDR and Cuba. And because the GDR invited Castro to come round, on a state visit pretty much, Cuba actually gifted East Germany an island off the coast. Ernst Thälmann Island, obviously named after Ernst Thälmann, the communist I was talking about last year was having a was. And you have a lot of videos nowadays as well saying, does East Germany still live on through this island? Because under the terms of reunification, they never mentioned Ernst Thälmann Island. So
that's interesting.
You have a lot of theories that East Germany still lives, but it really doesn't, because Castro clarified it was purely a ceremonial thing, and no one lives on that island anyway. So it's just a rock. So yeah, they might be a penguin or something. Right? Probably would be, to be fair. Some landlords would have had a bad time on there, or they would love it. I don't know. So yeah, a very close relationship with Cuba. I don't know so much about the relationship with the DPRK, but I do know that Honecker visited the DPRK as well, and Kim Il-sung visited the GDR as well. And again, very close relationship there. The GDR was very much involved in the international socialist community. It was a treasured member after the 1950s. Obviously, there was that early kind of tension of, these used to be the Nazis and stuff. But yeah, I think after the 50s, the GDR was really embraced into the socialist community, and it thrived as well. It enjoyed massive international support. And Fidel Castro as well did an excellent quote about Honecker. I would get it up, but I can't because I don't have the internet right now. But yeah, he spoke very fondly of Honecker, Castro, until the day he died. He called him one of the greatest German revolutionaries. So yeah, Castro was very much, enamoured by the GDR, and if it's good enough for Castro, it's good enough for me. I'll say that.
Says a lot. Castro's probably done a hell of a lot more than any of us sitting around on fucking Twitter all day. So
definitely
something to be said for that. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Would you mind taking just a couple more of these sort of variety questions just before we proceed?
Yeah, that's sure. Yeah.
Just to sort of knock them off the list here because I've got
no
substantial list. Great stuff. Okay, we're going to deal with the art and censorship a little bit later.
Yeah.
Eve Coley asks, I just got here, but I heard in an interview between Richard D. Wolff and Victor Grossman that German politics apparently won't touch GDR positivity, but there's nostalgia. Why the disconnect? That's an interesting question.
Well, obviously, I mean, if I'm going with the thesis, the idea that the reunification of Germany was actually an occupation of the East by the West, it's very clear that the West wants to discredit the GDR in every single aspect. From the moment it was born, the West tried to strangle the East. They called the strategy strangling it at birth. Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought then.
Strangling
at birth. They tried to delegitimize the GDR at every single point. Again, the Halstein Doctrine, saying if you have relations with East Germany, you don't speak to the West anymore. Every single point it tried to discredit East Germany. And in terms of education now about the GDR, they very much focus on the same kind of aspects that we're quite familiar with, the wall, the Stasi, and maybe how shit the Trabant was. There's no positivity there. And there's even a government commission as well to assess, I believe the actual quote is, the crimes of the SED dictatorship. Yeah. And they write books as well. They're very heavily involved in education in Germany about the GDR. And again, they focus on those same aspects, and that's one of the big. The GDR have to subscribe to that department to get their work published on the GDR in Germany. But then you have the disconnect of people that live there and don't see their lives in the official history. They might recognise the Stasi existed, but perhaps some of their political freedoms were curtailed in a way, but they don't see their own life in that history. They don't, they emphasise that community spirit and the rights that we talked about all the way through, the right to a job and housing, and the fact to have food in your belly as well. A lot of them don't connect with this official history. So that's why nostalgia's there. It's also probably a reaction as well to the way that the West occupied the East. The Treuhand that I talked about, the privatisation of East German industry for, 1 Deutschmark and mass unemployment rate. So they probably cling to that past as almost a sign of their own dignity as well. We once lived as first-class citizens, but now we're lesser in a way. So yeah, nostalgia is definitely a really interesting movement. It's often focused on the products that were available in East Germany rather than the politics of it. But yeah, the West German state, the current German state even, fundamentally tries to shit on the GDR at every opportunity because it doesn't want that opposition to neoliberal capitalism. Of course. At the end of the day, it doesn't want people to know there's an alternative to the life we live right now.
Yep.
I mean, as speaking as someone who, when I leave university, is probably going to find it very hard to get a job, and especially going to find it very hard to get a house.
Yeah.
The GDR really stands out to me as a place that put people first and looked after German people and allowed people to express themselves. I don't see a positive future under this capitalist society for myself. Whereas under a socialist system, you're there.
Christ, yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. It's very scary when you sort of finish college or you finish school, or you finish your sort of formal education, and you're sort of thrown out into the real world, and you're just like, is this all there is? I can't get a job, I can't get a place, it's too expensive to stay here, to anywhere, especially if you live in any sort of urban centres, and it's very fucking bleak. And given that you're already a communist, I don't know how it's going to radicalize you any further. I don't know. You're going to be like a hardcore, like, I don't know, anti-revisionist, like a Gonzalowite or something like that.
Oh God, could you imagine? Check in on me in 2 weeks and we'll see where I'm at.
we'll have to see how things go. Watch the space.
Leading on from that, do you want to talk about the transfer from education, the GDR, to jobs? I think that was a question.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. Yeah, we said we'd talk a little bit about work and that as well. I think we can return to democracy. There's another question to ask about sort of the claim that East Germany is undemocratic in that, but I think we can talk a little bit more about that afterwards. But do you want to maybe?
Yeah, well, I could cover that claim under the general topic of democracy, so I'll come back to that.
We'll come back to
talk specifically then about the transfer of education to work.
Yeah, I'll read out the question that was given earlier on in the chat, just to sort of frame this a little bit more. So Jason Melhorn says, I'm a little bit late, but I have a question. How did people enter the labour market from school? Did they have job interviews, and how did they change jobs? And so we can jump into it from there.
Sorry, I didn't make any notes on this, so I'm speaking very much off the wing here, but I have read a lot about this. So education in the GDR was very much focused on getting a job. There was lots of visits of students to factories and workplaces. There was a lot of communication between student and worker, and they were very much united in terms of that. So I also mentioned earlier as well that the principle of a polytechnic university was invented in the GDR, and that's all over the shop nowadays. We have a lot of them in Britain. So that principle spread a lot, and it enabled people that weren't academically minded to get a quality education in work. In terms of your career path in the GDR, so you attended school, obviously. They got rid of the grammar schools after the war. The grammar schools are now being brought back into Germany since reunification. Again, intensifying that class divide between the bourgeoisie and the petty bourgeoisie and the working class, who usually can't get the qualifications they're after unless you've got some kind of talent or something. They got rid of the grammar school system. You went to high school, and then you'll do further education, which would either involve college or university, and then you would actually be conscripted into the army. Conscription was brought in 1956, I believe, which is when it was created. So everyone did 2 years in the National People's Army, or the border guards, or they could do a kind of supplementary work. So they would, say if you're a conscientious objector, which is more like kind of like religious backing to it, you could be you just go straight into work, or you would be a non-combatant role in the army. So you did your time in the army. Again, conscription was perfectly normal in this time as well. It's not like the GDR was some kind of Nazi-like militarist country or anything. Conscription was the norm in Britain and Germany, the USSR, France, I believe America. Now you think about the draft when it came to Vietnam. Conscription was perfectly normal time. Anyway, you came out of the army, or you could stay in the army if you really wanted to, and you were. And because you fostered those relations in school with local work, it was very easy to just get a job in your local place, And again, because you had that universal right to a job, unless you were either unable to work, although there were plenty of opportunities for, I don't know if it's the right word, but, disabled people to get jobs. Again, you had that fundament. If you couldn't find a job, very unlikely. The state would put all of its effort into finding you one, and you would get work in the end. So progression from, student to worker in the GDR.
That's class. And actually, just in the chat there, I do see that we have a comrade who says that they actually grew up in the GDR. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, which is cool. They said that they had astronomy in school. One of the comrades that was mentioning astronomy in school, and this comrade, Lon Bar, I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly, but they said that they loved it. So that's very interesting to have a comrade here. You correct us if we're saying anything wrong, comrade.
No, please do, yeah. Because I'm speaking from the British context, so I might get a few things wrong, but
yeah,
it's always nice to hear from former East Germans as well, and I also get a lot of comments on them as well a lot of the time.
Do you get those on the channel as well?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't get them so much on the channel. The people on the channel, they usually say you're chatting shy, but you're blind to communist propaganda and that. But
the usual.
But no, I tend to get a lot of private messages to just people saying like, thank you for shedding light on what my life was actually like and that, and it genuinely
cool.
some pride about that.
Yeah, so, that's absolutely brilliant. And just to anyone who missed out at the start, we did mention a certain video series, like a documentary series of people actually describing their experiences of growing up in the GDR. It's in the description box below. You'll find it. There's like 3 videos. Each one's about half an hour long. They're fairly recent as well. There's a new one coming out this coming Sunday, and you'll get. You remember the name? I don't remember the name right now.
It's called Das andere Leben. I'm sure there could be a link, but it's, if you search up the
below this, yeah.
Kommunistische Organisation or Communist Organisation, on you should find it, and all the subtitles are in English, so you know.
Yeah.
I'll get some more drinks.
Yes, go get your drinks.
I'll literally be about 2 minutes. I also need a Waz as well.
Okay, you go have fun. I will answer a random question. Let me get this question.
Lovely.
Let's deal with this question. Anarchism. Here we go. This is an interesting one. So Will Turner earlier on asked, now we're jumping off the subject of the GDR just while our comrade's in the bathroom. I'll get our comrade's response when he comes back. I'll give my own personal perspective, and then comrade Josh Swann can give his response when he comes back. So what are our opinions on anarchism? I like anarchism. I think anarchism's cool. I think anarchism is very, very useful for people who have finally seen the limits of liberalism and social democracy and the sort of standard right wing to centre left that we get in the standard what do they call it? The window, the something window that we have in sort of general mainstream politics. Unless you're in the United States where you have like the right wing and you have the centre right wing, right wing Republicans and centre right Democrats or whatever. But generally, like in most parts of the world, you have kind of like a right wing and then you have like a centre left. Once you get outside of that, anarchism is quite useful. It does serve a purpose because it does make people allow people to challenge capitalism, to sort of transcend the limits that they had sort of grown up with and have been led to believe. But at the same time, it also allows them to sort of slowly work through the anti-communist propaganda that they have been inculcated with and inundated with, I suppose, for their entire lifetime. Overton window. That's a comrade's in charge saying now. The Overton window, yeah. So yeah, you can still be an anarchist and be like, oh well, I'm not a communist. I'm not like one of those communists. I want communism, but I don't want to be like, the USSR, or I don't want to be like Cuba or something. And it's a useful transitionary sort of period. And so I tend to be very, gentle and with anarchist comrades because we've all been there and we all understand why we're there. And how are you, comrade? Just talking a little bit about anarchism.
Sound. Yeah, we're supposed to talk about that, weren't we?
Yeah. I decided I'd take it now. While
I'm a bit concerned about time, obviously. I don't want to annoy the wife.
We've got about 45 minutes before the trouble will start, and then after that, I'm going to have to start whispering.
I'll try to be quick then. But no, it's been really classy. I mean, I wouldn't mind speaking to you again and that.
Part 2, yeah. Do you want to give your takes on anarchism? I've just said that I'm basically quite positive of it.
Anarchism, yeah.
Because I generally see it as a transitionary phase.
Cheers, everyone, by the way.
Yeah, cheers everybody. Cheers and a little drink to that. I generally see it as a kind of a transitionary stage from liberalism to a communism that has kind of like a clear pathway to actually get there, because anarchism will give you that sort of vision of communism that you want, stateless, classless society and so on and so forth. At least maybe the anarcho-communist types. I know there are sort of like individualist, egoist communists who sort of see anarchism as a I don't know, kind of as a mindset or something like that. And I think when you're getting there, you're just kind of dealing with it's basically just,
there's a lot of termini online people that tend to be anarchists, I think.
Well,
but the anarcho-communists tend to be sound.
They tend to be pretty good.
I agree with them on nearly everything. mean,
Pretty much.
There's a lot of really principled anarchists. Like there's a few accounts on Twitter as well that are really good and actually a star. Fair play.
Anarcho-Stalinist.
That's a contradiction of terms because he was an anarchist.
Exactly, and he really hated his anarchists. Actually, that's one of the few essays that I've read by Stalin. I was kind of just like, all right, relax.
Yeah, I actually did. I actually just saw the Foreign Language Press. I believe it's a Maoist publisher. Just published a new Stalin book about anarchism versus socialism.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Leninism, I think. So
that sounds interesting.
I just thought of that as well as the revolutionary writers of Seamus Costello. So I've got those two coming on as well because I've read a lot about Inlar and stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to obviously learn more. So I'd love to talk more about Ireland, but I also feel as well coming from the British context, maybe my opinions don't matter so much as well.
Oh, no,
but no, Ireland is one of my great loves in hiry, and I'm doing my degree on it. So
we'll have to.
Thank you. I mean, you're not biased at all because you've spoken it. You know,
I don't have a vested
interest. But I had a comment as well. Yeah, I had a comment on it as well, actually, saying, it's another Brit telling the Irish how to run their affairs.
Tansplaining.
Yeah, it was tansplaining. I love that too.
Such a funny. Well, you got like your token Paddy to fill in one of the quotes, so you know.
That was the one, you see. That was my kind of insurance against being called a tansplainer.
This is it, exactly. You've got a fucking Paddy reading out the Fenian Proclamation from 1867. Anyway, class.
It was an excellent reading, though.
Thank you, comrades. I feel very passionate when I read that particular text. Fenian Proclamation.
I had a friend that heard that, and he felt very inspired by it.
Love to hear
it.
He
said that made the video, so you know what? Good on you, mate.
Cheers, bud. I really, really appreciate that, and I'm glad people found it useful. That was a recent video over on Socialist Swann's channel. Go ahead and check that out if you want to see what the fuck we're talking about.
That didn't do well as well. Yeah, that didn't do too well.
People are excited. Well, people are excited about your channel specifically to hear about the GDR. They're very curious about because there's not.
Yeah, well, I guess that's how I started as well. You know, so that's kind of what I built the initial subscriber base off. So
that's your brand.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, it's my brand. GDR merch, man.
Man.
Jesus Christ.
Let's stay on brand, okay? Let's return to the subject.
Stay on brand and go back to the GDR.
All right, sorry. I apologize to the Yanks in chat here. we're butchering our Yank accents here. So, all right.
I do love Americans, just not your government.
No. I absolutely love the proletarian working class Americans. But unfortunately,
good on them.
The imperialists are not a friend of ours.
Just sort your government out, please. Just have a revolution tomorrow, please.
If you wouldn't mind, just sort it out. It'd be class.
Please, I'll be all right with that.
Great stuff. Come here to me, comrade. Let's jump back into it. So I think we were going to talk about democracy.
Yes.
So I think we're
talking democracy. Yeah.
Can we start this off with one of the questions from the Q&A from the chat here, which will sort of frame and lead into that. So one of the comrades, Cornelius, brilliant name, Cornelius Fabian Ousted Perrier, brilliant name, asks Paul Marin, what would the response be to one who claims that East Germany is undemocratic due to the lack of formal opposition? So here we go, the big one. East Germany is undemocratic. What do we say?
Brilliant. If I can get my notes on this, Walter Ulbricht provided an excellent quote, which I believe kind of sums up this refutation of the fact that the GDR wasn't democratic because it didn't have a official opposition. And he says, quote, "Some citizens ask why we have no opposition and think that an opposition is part of a real democracy. But democracy does not reign where various parties act against each other, where the power of the working class is divided and an opposition exists. After all, an opposition in the GDR could be directed only against the policy of our government. It would therefore have to be directed against the introduction of the 45-hour work week, against the construction of an additional 100,000 apartments, against our low rents, against the stability of, against the machine tractor stations, against the high expenditures on science and culture, against our peace policy, directed against the unity of the working class, against our workers and peasant state. It would have to be in favour of employing militarists and fascists in high positions of power, pact, and the preparations for a nuclear war. Tolerating such an opposition would be criminal. And I just think that there
Beautiful.
just sums up the socialist position on democracy.
Absolutely.
Because obviously under the society that we live under now, we often call it the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Because look at the ruling parties in society. I think America is the perfect example of that. You know, Democrat and Republican, they both represent different wings of the capitalist class. You know, it's two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
You know, you don't have a real say in America of voting for a socialist party. You might get a Bernie Sanders, but he isn't going to change the state and its character, because that has been built on hundreds of years of imperialist capitalist rule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Whereas,
founded on genocide, built on the backs of slavery.
Exactly. 100%, yeah. And anyone that says a Western system is democratic is talking out their ass. Yeah. You can look at the fact that America has unelected judges that can be picked by a president before he goes into an election, and they sit there for life and make sure that the conservative view is maintained for generations after that president is gone.
Outrageous.
Yeah. And like,
outrageous.
And it's the same in Britain as well, you know, of laws and a fucking monarch. Like, we're not democratic in any way, shape or form. The government could do whatever, it doesn't have a sufficient opposition because they all got voted out because of action. So now nothing, because they ignore the crucial votes on things like British soldiers should be able to torture people when they go abroad and commit imperialist adventures. They no longer get tried for Ireland, and they can't get tried for what they did in Iraq.
Yeah.
We now, because the opposition has no power, they can now, as we already talked about, it can now legally infiltrate leftist organisations and commit sexual assault and murder. That is not a democracy.
Fucking ridiculous.
But so when it comes to the dictatorship of the proletariat, we have to take a similar approach, and obviously not committing shit like that, but you know what I mean? We have to not tolerate the bourgeois opposition, because we are the majority class. We are the many. They are the few. Yeah. And to ensure democracy for the many, we have to disenfranchise the few, because their vote would lead to the downfall of working class power.
Exactly.
And if we allow these groups to agitate and organise, if we allow fascists, Nazis and capitalists to get a foothold in our socialist system, they will tear it to the fucking ground. Look at what Gorbachev did in the Communist Party. Look what fucking Boris Yeltsin did as well. Yep. Look at all of these capitalist roads our working class states.
Yep.
And fuck your idea of democracy. Socialist democracy is the way, and I'm going to describe how.
Fucking yes, absolutely. Let's, with that fucking spicy blast off into the space of socialist democracy. Let's go for it.
Excellent. So yeah, so the leading democratic body in the GDR was something called the Volkskammer. So 2/3 of the Volkskammer was represented by political parties, which represented different aspects of society. So the main party was the Socialist Unity Party, that being the main organ of the working class, because it represented the unity of the Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party. And they were there representing the workers. There was also the Democratic Farmers Party. There was a National Liberal Party to represent small businessmen. There was the Christian Democratic Unionist Party, which still exists in Germany today, actually. Angela Merkel was from that. And so was her dad, actually. Which obviously represents a kind of conservative bourgeoisie in a way. And there was also, quite controversially, there was the National Democratic Party, which was basically there to represent ex-soldiers in the Wehrmacht and, Hitler's army, and ex-Nazis that had been reformed in a way. So this representation of the parliament of every single aspect of society. And to ensure that representation never went away, there was a set number of seats for these parties, which, but it means that every aspect of society had their voice heard when it came to decision making, and the things that changed were the candidates that went into it. So there was elections in the GDR. They were every 4 years, and there were debates beforehand about the candidates, about the character of the candidates as well. And this is the principle of democratic centralism. So the population was engaged in these debates about who would be, the best candidate for the job. And once these debates were completed, once the population had a sufficient say in the debates, the candidate was put onto a ballot. There was a list, and you voted, either submitting the list as it was, which means you approve of the debates that were had, or start the candidates you don't agree with. And again, adhering to the principle of democratic centralism, you have those debates, you fight it out, but once you come to a conclusion, you stick with that conclusion in the interest of proletarian unity. And I think that's a vital part of being a socialist, because you can't divide the working class. You can't have what we have now, where you have different interests fighting against each other. I mean, just look at the Labour Party.
Exactly.
If that party doesn't benefit from democratic centralism, and it's a fucking mess because of it. You have Starmer fundamentally change Labour overnight.
It's a joke, yeah.
Past few years, and now it's back to the Blairism. So you can have these divisions in parties, and it can tear them apart. I mean, the 2017 election, because Blairites and it was sabotaging every single step of the way. There's that kind of parliamentary, but there's also a much wider system of democracy as well. Also, what's quite GDR was the debates around the 1968 Constitution. So the government kind of drew together a draft constitution, and this was put forward to the people. It's en masse in their local areas, and the press, and hundreds of amendments that were made to the constitution based on these debates. And once the debates were had, there was a referendum whether to accept it or not, and it was deemed completely free and democratic, and it won by 95% because the people had a say in how their country was run. Whereas compare that to West Germany, whose constitution was written in 1949 in London, with no democratic say from the West German people, bearing in mind as well that they voted to expropriate the land of ex-Nazi war criminals. It's night and day.
Yep.
Again, I've talked about this much more, so if you want to hear more, please do go over to that. A bit of a self plug there. But the final thing I want to talk about is the system of Eingaben. Like and subscribe, guys. The final thing, Patreon. Perchance donate and get nothing back. Oops. No, very appreciated. Thank you so much to the patrons. I have infinite respect for you. The final thing I want to talk about is the system of Eingaben, which was a kind of citizens' complaint procedure. So it meant that you could submit a complaint to any member of the government at any level. Honecker himself actually received hundreds of thousands of these complaints, and legally, by law, he had to, or anyone that received an Eingaben had to reply to it within 4 weeks. And there was an independent commission as well that was elected by the people to, have the checks and balances to make sure that they put their utmost energy into, serving the people in a way. I guess it's almost kind of like a proto-mass line in a way, that the party kept in touch with the people. And I think this was most strong up until the early 80s, maybe, where, again, I already talked about the fact that a lot of these procedures just kind of became routine in a way, and they lost their truly democratic character. But up until then, if the government received a complaint, as long as it wasn't something about, say, abolish the wall or something, they would try their utmost best to help these people. If someone has served the party, the SED, for years, and they weren't getting the accommodation they were promised, they would also just be built. Because again, they were building 100,000 houses every year, and I think that's something we don't see in Western systems. You can't send a letter to, say, the Queen in England and expect to have your rent dropped or something like that, or have a better house given to you. You don't have any kind of communication between you and your elected representative. You have these surgeries, they call them, on every Sunday, where the MP supposedly has to listen to the constituencies' grievance in Parliament, but they don't fucking do that, because we have something called the whip system, where the party says you will vote this way or you will be kicked out of the party, you will lose your funding. So listen to me, avoid your principles. So parties just vote in blocks in capitalist society because they're told to. They don't represent the interests of the people in any way. It's why Labour dropped out from all these debates about the controversial shit that I've been mentioning, because the party said if you vote for it, lose funding. But also as well, it wasn't just parties that were in Parliament. There were also the mass organisations. So there was the trade unions that were involved. They had representatives in the Parliament. There was the youth organisations, the culture organisations, the German Women's League. So I mean that every single aspect of society had a direct say in how the country was run. The seats, So it meant that there was no one that was left behind when it came to government. So it's like, you might have had these set limits on how many seats these parties had, but you had a direct say in who filled those seats, and based on their character, you could vote for them, and you had the debates. Socialist democracy, although maybe flawed, I have my criticisms of it, especially towards the later period, far more democratic than what we know today.
Of course,
and people are. It could always be better. It could have had the Soviet system in 1917, but that wasn't the material conditions that the GDR came into. It was built on the ruins of a fascist society, and they needed that democratic centralism, that authoritarianism in a way, just to drive the people away from the fascist ideology.
Of course,
Set limits of how many seats the working class party education, we would have had a situation like West Germany where there was no active apology for the Holocaust until the 70s. Whereas the GDR said that shit was bad from the outgo, and they actively apologized and they actively cost. So I just think socialist democracy is the only democracy when it comes to creating a socialist state, because it puts the working class first. It disenfranchises the rich who are going to tear down our system. And, NDR wasn't democratic. They always had the fucking meme, don't it? It's like, if I was democratic in the name, it clearly wasn't. They were overcompensating. It's like, the DPRK. It's like, shut up, please. Because you just don't understand the conditions that these people have come from. Now, actually works. Sorry, just to briefly talk about the DPRK as well, very briefly. Now, Kim Jong-un has less power than Donald Trump does. So it's like, Anyway, I hope that answered the question. If you've got any more questions about that, please check my video and leave a comment, and I'll make sure I get back to you. So
brilliant. And I'm sure if people are curious as well, they could probably contact you maybe on Twitter or something as well.
Please, my DMs are always open. So please do let me know, and I'll try. I'm not the most read on the GDR as well, so I'm always learning as well. So if you have different sources and you want to tell me something as well, please do let me know, because I'm always learning.
That's brilliant.
And that's the whole point of this YouTube channel and being communists. We don't know it all.
We're learning together.
We're all together, exactly. That's the whole point of this stream and of our YouTube channels separately. And obviously our Twitter friends as well. And also being in communist organisations. Every day is a school day when 100%. You're a communist. I think that's just what's amazing. Every single day. You learn more every single day. So,
every single day, absolutely. That's brilliant.
I hope that answered.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Cameron. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Can I just ask, one of the comrades, Googly Moogly, has asked for book recommendations. So can you ask Swann if he has any book recommendations on these topics? I know he's a historian and I'm highly interested in history myself. So we can maybe if you have any recommendations there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try not to recommend academic articles because they're very hard to get your hands on. And also they're not very readable as well. But in terms of just like books you can just buy from I know it's frowned upon, but say Amazon or something. I know I'm not a proper communist, but they are cheap, so. I'm poor out here, so I have to look.
Oh, I know the feeling, mate. I know the feeling.
My first point of call would be ebooks as well. Yeah, definitely. But if you in terms of books, Socialist State or Socialist Paradise is the first point of call. That book turned me into an ML.
Wow.
It shifted me from a Trotskyist to Marxism and Leninism, because you just see the impact that the GDR has on ordinary working people like myself. And, obviously a lot of people in the chat as well. Life was fundamentally better under that system. And that book just outlines it so well, because one of the authors has actually lived in the GDR and was raised there as well. So, and I think the other one as well was also involved in GDR's TV. They were a presenter for the GDR. But yeah, excellent book. It's really short as well. It's only about, I think it's less than 200 pages. And it's only a small little book as well. It's tiny, but it's packed to the brim of information. And I'd absolutely recommend it, especially if it's your first time you're reading about the GDR. Your hands on. Next, I'd recommend Mary Fulbrook's The People's State. Much bigger book, a little bit more academic, but it goes much more into detail about every single aspect of life in the GDR, especially the people's life, the working class lives. But it also covers little bits about the Stasi as well, and the government. So that's another book to read. I'll say that's your second read. Women's rights, why women have better sex under socialism is the book. My dad saw it and he was like, "Are you reading porn?" I was like, "I swear to God, I'm not. It's professional history." But no,
I'm a historian. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because there was actually a Czechoslovakian research institute that looked into sexual health in socialist countries, and it found out that women reach orgasm more in the GDR than they do in the West. So
I heard that, yeah. But
it also talks about wider issues of women's liberation and women's economic independence. It's written from a social democratic perspective, so it denounces the so-called authoritarianism of the USSR and the GDR specifically, but maybe cast that aside a little bit and just read into what actually happened in these places. They kind of agitate for like a Norway system, which is, if there's a communists out there will know that that's ridiculous. But read that book as well. But obviously, just keep an open mind towards it. I wouldn't recommend another book that's on my shelf. It was actually written by that institute I was talking about earlier, about the investigations into the crimes of the SED dictatorship. Don't read that one. It's a bunch of shite. It's not even sourced as well. So those are my three main recommendations. But if you want to talk about anything else, if there's any specific issues you're interested in, again, DM me, and I can point you towards some sources as well for that. So yeah.
Great stuff.
Even if they're behind a paywall as well, I can send you a screenshot of them. So I'm happy to help.
True comrades right there. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Conrad. We'll just do one more question and then we'll jump into work. I am conscious of the time here. I've got about 20 more minutes before I'm going to get in trouble. So we'll
I'll try to speed up a little bit. I've really enjoyed this. It's been class.
That's the problem. It's too much fun, so we end up talking shit.
It is, yeah.
We end up talking for like half an hour about fucking Amsterdam, fucking brownies, and just nonsense.
The fucking space muffins.
What the fuck are you doing, space muffins? Sorry. Anyway, come here.
We need a pint stream at some point.
We definitely need a pint stream at one point.
A full pint stream.
Not just like a fucking
no
stream.
topics.
No topics. Just talking shite. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's basically what we're doing here.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of structure.
Well, no,
again, we're principle, structure, and
you've done your
alignment and discipline.
Well, you've done your research, and you're properly you're giving a lot of great information. I'm definitely having a point stream right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I'm on the sick for now or some shit like that. So I'm on the same boat as you, mate.
Brilliant. Okay, so that Honourist, excuse me, says Paul. Good comrade, friend of the show.
He's actually writing a book as well about Eric Honecker.
I just saw that.
Give him a follow.
Yeah, definitely.
Check him out. He's doing good stuff there.
This sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to reading that now. Yeah. So the comrade asks, what does Swann think about the hammer and compass with the reeds? Just about the symbol.
Oh God, it's my favourite symbol.
Also, tell Socialist Swann I say hi.
Hey up, mate. Hope you're doing all right. Have a good one. Yeah, the hammer and circle is the hammer and compass is a beautiful symbol. I've actually got a flag of it up on my wall. It's conveniently positioned where I'm sat on my desk, and behind me I've got my bookshelf, but no flags. So like when I'm talking to like a lecturer, they don't see my USSR flag and my starry plough and my GDR flag. So I've tactically positioned it, but it's there, and I think it's probably my favourite socialist flag. Obviously, it represents the union of the workers being the hammer, the intellectuals and the engineers being the compass, and the peasants and the farmers the circle of wheat around it. I just think it's an excellent symbol. It looks beautiful for starters. I'd honestly say it's a better flag than the USSR. I mean, don't cancel me, but I think it is. So,
hot take.
Yeah, but it's got a really nice symbolism to it. So, and it's unique as well. You know, it's not like a standard hammer. It applies to the German context in a way because of the intellectualism. It's like the Duce symbol as well. You know, with the paintbrush.
That's right.
It's quite like that. So, so yeah, I think the East German symbol is class, and the aesthetic of East Germany is pretty cute.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Great stuff. So come here to me, will we talk a little bit about work and the socialist workplace in the GDR? Do you want to I know time wise it's not ideal at the moment, but do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit? I know, look, what I will say is that there's a fantastic video over on our comrades channel that goes into most of this in pretty serious detail. So if we do miss anything this evening today, then you can find it over there.
Again, I'll be quite brief because I'm conscious about talking about my praise and criticisms of the GDR. So again, please do watch that video if you are in specifics of it. But in terms of like a quick overview, I just want to stress that the GDR's constitution from day one guaranteed the right to work for every single citizen, because everyone had a role to play in socialism. Unemployment was an alien concept in the GDR from, the early 50s. Everyone had a job. And from the 1960s as well, the GDR actually implemented the 8-hour workday, which was there from the start, but also the 5-day work week. So, for the time as well. Beyond that as well, the main workplace that happened in the GDR was called a Volkseigener-Betrieb, which was a people's-owned enterprise, which basically functioned as nationalised workplaces, but the people directly had shares in them as well, so they directly drew from the benefits of their labour there, and it wasn't exploitative. I mean, I think that the pay differential between the lowest earners in the GDR and the highest earners in the GDR was about 1 to 3. So the highest earners got paid 3 times more than the lowest, whereas compare that to the West at the time, it was about 1 to 20. Whereas you compare that now, it's probably a lot worse because, I think there's a recent article about there's a bigger wealth gap now than there was in the French Revolution. Just think about that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so anyway, about what the socialist workplace actually looked like. It was a much more communal place, and a lot more facilities were there as well. So there was free healthcare provided on site to immediately deal with sickness and injury. There were sport and leisure facilities on site as well. A lot of larger workplaces actually had their own sports team as well. So there's an opportunity there to engage in leisure, and also, because there's a big focus on sport in the GDR. They always talk about the doping scandals that happened in the GDR. Big achievement as well. But despite that, not looking at that, there were a lot of athletes that worked their way there, and that wouldn't have been possible without the fact that because they were ordinary workers, they weren't professional athletes. They were workers who had learnt their craft in a way in these leisure facilities at their own. So I just think that's incredible. The way the work was organised as well, it was in something called the brigades. So it meant that small teams of workers would kind of compete amongst each other to reach their targets, and these always based on the betterment of the team. So they formed quite strong communities there as well. They would go on, like, say, day trip to the countryside, or they would go on like nights out to a cinema or a theatre and engage in like cultural life, or even just like like a casual drink or like a meal after working all day and just having. They were very, very close communities, and you don't really see that so much. We're quite isolated and we're placed into our own little bubbles of screw over someone else to do better in your own workplace. And these brigade systems as well almost acted like mini unions as well. It meant that you could organise collectively, and because you couldn't be sacked, like legally you could not be sacked, in implementing what they wanted. So there'll be instances where the workplace would be unbearably hot in summer, and the brigades would just say, right, sort this out or we're not coming in tomorrow. And then the next day, done. That was it. Boom. The windows were painted black to store the heat and everything, and ventilation was improved. And it was like, boom. because the worker was fundamentally in charge of their own workplace. There was also something called the Workers' and Peasants' Inspectorate, which was a democratically elected body which would tour workplaces across the country and make sure they were safe, conforming to health and safety standards. And again, they were directly elected. They weren't some kind of government body. These were workers who were taking their own free time to, ensure the safety of their fellow workers. Of course, there were flaws in that towards the end. I've already talked about that. But in terms of the GDR's heyday, they were quite effective in what they were doing. And the working class was also armed as well. There was something called the fighting groups of the working class, who were given free time, and they were the active first line. There was more people in these groups, and they were voluntary. It wasn't conscripted. More people in these groups in the army. There were 200,000 of them. And I think there's a brilliant quote as well. There's an article that the GDR actually posted about why they built the wall, and they addressed the West calls the East a concentration camp of sorts. And they say that what concentration camps armed their inmates? Because the workers were armed. They had guns. They didn't fucking do that back in the Nazi times, did they? No. So I just think, please obviously consult my video as well for more information. We're a bit time restrained here. And also just a bit further reading. I'm happy to point people towards these things. So the way that work functioned in the DDR is a big inspiration for us today, because it gives us an example of a workplace that is actually built on the betterment of the worker, not the boss. And it gives us society as well. Whereas right now, I think mental health as well. The reason why we see such a decline in mental health recently is because we're all so individualized.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, like during worker struggles, like strikes in the West, suicide rates have dropped because people have been engaged in active struggles, have been involved in communities and organising for themselves. But imagine a society where work is like that almost every day. We're always talking to each other, we're always communicating about how best we can better our lives and that. And I think that would do wonders, not only for our economy and for our living standards, but also our mental health as well. Because that's a big crisis right now, Absolutely. Depression's everywhere. That's because of the system we live under. And no fucking wonder, because we don't have our basic needs met. So, absolutely. Yeah. I'm conscious of time, so we'll rush on.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We will be talking about mental health. Actually, we're going to be doing a stream next Wednesday with Comrade Tumblestein. We're going to be our comrade's going to be
class.
Yeah, that'd be interesting as well. So we're going to
an
be talking
excellent
about
comrade.
Yeah, great comrade. Yeah, so we'll be diving into that subject in a little bit more detail, talking about capitalism, mental health, and capitalist realism, and all this, all that good stuff. So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, comrade. And again, if anyone wants more information on work, then go ahead and check out Socialist Swann's channel, and there's a great video on the subject, diving into the subject over there. So come here to me. We've gone through work, we've gone through democracy, we've given a full overview of the GDR. Let's talk about some of the main achievements and some fair criticisms as well of the GDR. And we can sort of group the last two main questions that we're going to address together now. With all this in mind, should we as Marxist-Leninists uphold and defend the GDR? Why and why not? And one of the comrades has asked for examples of critiques to the DDR by socialists. That's Bruno Hola asked for example. So what would be a good socialist critique to the GDR? And also, I think in this point we're probably going to have to talk about Berriman's question with regard to censorship of the arts and artists in the GDR. So let's deal with these topics right now. Do you want to? Will we jump into that?
Yeah, I mean, I've already talked about a lot of my positives, so I'm just I've already kind of investigated a little bit. So the aforementioned drive for housing for everyone. Rents were only 2 to 5% of someone's wage. And again, that community spirit that was prominent in the housing blocks is something that we could implement today. When you shift the wood of helping people, great things are possible. And they were building 100,000 houses every single year from 1970. That's definitely something we should uphold. Women's rights, I've covered that as well. Definitely something we should uphold. And it shows that the way to liberation for minorities and oppressed groups is socialism. Capitalism will not give us. We have to fight for them. whereas a socialist system will listen to the voices of the people that live under the state and look after them, especially with the example I've referred to LGBT rights as well. Of course, before it was quite oppressive, but through the self-organisation of the people, that life got better for them. And by the end, just before the downfall, LGBTQ plus people were normalised in society, which is something that didn't happen in the West for a long, long time. Education and childcare, I've kind of touched on that as well. Childcare is vitally important for women's liberation. Again, completely free. There was a sense of youth community as well through the Free German Youth, which was again the kind of youth organisation in the GDR, and also had direct representation in the parliament as well. So yeah, I'm going to do a video about that at some point. So again, stay tuned. Yeah, the flourishing of art and culture. So again, this is the two kind of parallels. So there was censorship. You critiqued the socialist state from that capitalist perspective, it wouldn't get published. You know, we have to recognise that. And again, that comes under the category of that capitalist opposition to the workers' state that I mentioned before, Brick talked about. But there was also that flourishing of art as well that we have to recognise. You know, I talked about Bertolt Brecht earlier, and a lot of the works in the GDR, a lot of the films and the books were actually critiques of the GDR. There's a very famous one called Divided Sky, which talks about the division of Germany and the fact that East Germany isn't doing very well at the time. And that was openly published and shared about, and it was a very popular thing because it suggested socialist alternatives to that. And these were actually also enacted on by the government as well. So there's that kind of twofold thing there. So if your critiques of the GDR were too Western oriented, to kind of capitalist Rhoda, you know, where they would be repressed, but also intellectual rights were secured by something called the Culture League, which had, again, a democratic say in the parliament, and it was a kind of a union in a way of intellectuals, and they, you know, culture flourished. I mean, there's something called the Palace of the Republic, which is where the parliament sat, and it was a massive now to build a reconstruction of the old Palace of the Kaisers back from the German Empire. They knocked it down. So you had like bowling alleys, you had art galleries, restaurants, ballrooms. You had the parliament in there as well. You could see anything in there. It had massive art displays. Art flourished in the GDR in a way, and especially I was talking about LGBTQ liberation as well. About in the late 80s, there were films being made about gay rights. So yeah, I think it's give and take on that kind of front as well. It's something we can critique from now. But in the context of what they would do, you have to bear in mind that on the front line of the Cold War, things did have to be censored. So it's not nice. The road to socialism sometimes isn't nice. You know, sometimes we have to take harsh decisions in a way for the greater good. And I think that's a principle of Marxism-Leninism. It's not being utopian, it's basing it in what actually exists in society. Is another thing as well that I was talking about, and of course the focus on sports and a healthy population. And I also talked earlier as well about socialist internationalism, so I was talking about the issues of racism in the GDR, but also the fact that they hosted international meetings as well, and also sent direct military aid to anti-colonial struggles in Africa. So it's incredible. Again, they were using that, the number one army in the world at the time, and they were using it for the cause of anti-imperialism, and I just think that's brilliant. Whereas the West German army was there threatening to invade the East, and they joined NATO. So, and they also fucking invaded Iraq, I think, as well. So, you know, fuck them.
Fuck them. Absolutely.
The critiques of the GDR. I think there's a number of critiques we can make as socialists of the GDR. So of course, we have to recognise at the end of the day, it did collapse. You know, and the people brought it down as well at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, they were funded in the opposition movement in a way was funded by the West, but at the end of the day, it was the people that brought it down. So we have to look at why that happened. And I think one of the major aspects was the lack of consumer goods, 100%, because it was kind of that night and day vision of West Germany versus East Germany in terms of what is your quality of life like? And when you've got access to Western television all the time that's showing you the opulence of Western life, you have that vision that everyone lives like that. I mean, look at the north of England right now. You know, this deindustrialized with unemployment, far-right groups, drug dealers, everything. It's fucked. And I'm sure there's a very similar as well. And there's definitely a similar situation in East Germany right now. Because capitalism isn't kind to people that used to resist it. It doesn't treat them fairly. Another critique is also the repression of 1953. I talked about way back, about 3 hours ago now, about the workers' strikes that were suppressed. Definitely we should be condemning that, but we should also understand as well that evidence in that to bring down socialism. And although the actions weren't proportionate, something had to be done at the end of the day. It also left as well of future protest movements. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about them very much. The Stasi, I could do a whole stream about this, but I'll be very brief. Not nice. You know, openly I'll say, not nice. But they served a very important purpose. Again, we've got to recognise that before the building of the wall, border was open, and you had Nazi spies coming into the east and feeding back to the west. Like had Galen, who and head of the German intelligence service. The Stasi, I think, have been very overstated by history. Kind of vision that everybody in the GDR was being spied on. You know, cameras are fucking every bugged. That just isn't the case. They were called unofficial helpers of the Stasi. They were informants. They made up 8,000 of them, about 2% of the population. And I would ask you, how does survey Stars? Stasi operations were mainly directed against those colluding with the West. Protest movements, like I spoke before. The LGBT movement as well was actually spied on by the Stasi. Again, leadership had the fear of protest. And I think the claims as well that the Stasi killed people and tortured people are not true. In terms of deaths in prisons, they were next to zero, it must be said. Very, very low, especially people that came before them, and they're always compared to. And also, when the wall fell, the West German government tried to put on trial 30,000 Stasi members. Yeah, actually got put on trial for torture or murder, and 12 of them were imprisoned. So, 30,000 investigations, yet so few are actually tried for those crimes. So, we have to recognise that obviously bad shit was done, but we have to put it into proportion as well. We can't say that life was defined by the Stasi, and that's why much, because it wasn't really. When there was a poll done when the wall fell, I believe it was less than 5% that said their main issue with East Germany was their main issue was the fact they couldn't travel, they couldn't leave the GDR to go on holiday. But they did have holidays in the country. Workplace had holiday homes situated on the beaches in the countryside. And now, under a capitalist society, you want, but you don't have the money and the economic freedom to leave your own town. You don't have these work-sanctioned holidays anymore. You live in your shithole because you don't have the money and the liberty to leave. These vague political freedoms, but if you don't have the power, the economic power to do it, they mean nothing. And East Germans see that for what it is. So that's my take on that. On critique, I believe the GDR is also the response to gay rights. I've talked about this fairly. And my final major critique would be environmentalism. Obviously, the environmental movement is massive now. As the economy worsened, as the GDR got its oil supplies cut off by the Soviet Union. They turned to that resource at the start of the stream, brown coal, which is not very energy efficient. It leaves a massive amount of pollution. And they only turned to that because they knew it was environmentally damaging and they didn't want to use it. But when they got all this support cut off from the Soviet Union, they had nothing else left to power their industries. So they had to use this. And nothing that we can change in the future, turning to green energy. And the ideas of a green industrial revolution definitely light the way. And I think the future is green. And to be a green, you have to be red.
Absolutely.
We can't environmentalism under capitalism because private interests don't support that, have investments in fossil fuels. And the only way to get a sustainable society is through one that is first. And that's something we should experiment. So today as well. I'd just like to say very quickly as well before a final critique as well as environmentalist movements as well were actually by the Stasi as well, very heavily infiltrated. So there was also an unofficial peace, but there was official movement. There was official peace movement, denuclearization, but there was also a non-state-led one. It was also infiltrated by the Stasi. I suppose that's my, principled critiques of the GDR. But overall, answering that question, in GDR, absolutely 110% we should uphold the GDR with critical support. Yeah. We have to the failures of the GDR, like I just mentioned, because again, we have to recognize that it fell. There's a reason why it fell. But we have to learn these lessons so we don't repeat those mistakes again. Or ideally, we can adapt our plan to suit our own material conditions in a better way. We can't take this utopianist stand of saying they had a secret police, therefore we have to write off everything that was ever achieved in the GDR, because then you would have no plan for socialism. And again, a lot of the critiques of my past organisations I've been in, such as the SWP, was they didn't have a plan for socialism. Their plan was it was utopia through the class struggle. That won't happen. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail at the end of the day. Look at these experiments that have happened across the world. Look at, say, the Paris Commune or the Catalonian experiment or the German Revolution as well in 1919. They didn't know what they want. They weren't organised in a communist party with a sufficient vanguard. And because of that, they collapsed in such a short period of time. We have to know what we want. And to know what we want, we have to learn from history. We can't write things off because they're problematic in some kind of way. We have to pick the benefits. We have to find out what worked. We have to look at things dialectically. And if we ignore our history, we are doomed to repeat it and we will fail. Absolutely. We have to learn why socialism liberates people. And we have to implement that to our modern day to cope with the gig economy, to cope with the lack of unionisation and the kind of the vagueness of class lines now, which are presented to us. They're still very real, but we have to highlight to people how class is still a fundamental factor in our society, to adapt to the modern day whilst remembering our past so we don't repeat those mistakes. And hopefully fucking one day we'll get a second German Democratic Republic and hopefully one in England as well, and the 32 counties Socialist Republic in Ireland. And that'll be a good day.
Here, mate. I'm going to drink to that. Cheers.
Fucking good stream.
Fucking hell. That was class. Cheers, mate. I really fucking appreciate that. That was deadly. Really good principle take. And community. I just added in the chat there a little analysis of the economy of the GDR, which I think is important because, as our comrade said here, we
just got to crack open the last pint.
By all fucking means, have fun. Go for it.
There you go. Cheers, everyone.
We need to cheers, comrades. We need to uphold these experiments in socialism, but we also need to be critical and understand where they failed. And as you said in one of your videos, one of the key failings was that they didn't have any kind of accountability for the leadership and for the party bureaucracy, and so it sort of took a direction that maybe people wouldn't want it to go in later on. And these have since the time when this experiment was live, have been rectified by new advancements in Marxism-Leninism, in the Marxism-Leninism-Maoism sort of canon, that sort of MLM canon, through things like the mass line, through things like cultural revolution of some kind. But we can clearly see, if we look at that document that I shared in the chat there, that from sort of 1981 there was a definite move towards capitalism, and I think that the people who are will write off the GDR.
Sorry, comrade, I dropped out there.
Oh, you're okay. Don't worry. I was just doing the whole critiques and the positives and sorts
of
things.
Sound, yeah, okay.
But what I will say is that, from 1981, there are people who will just say that the entire experiment of the GDR was totally revisionist, and it's not even worth talking about. What I will say is that there actually is a lot of merit to that. From the period of 1981 onwards, they very much got onto that capitalist road.
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
And we need to be very clear about that. I mean, it did, and this is why it did go back into the capitalist road, and the same thing happened with like the Yugoslavia and so on and so forth. So there was this definite move towards capitalism in the 80s, and in that document that I shared in the chat there, you'll see one of the paragraphs says that while the traditional planned system remained fundamentally unchanged, a number of significant innovations did occur during drafting and implementation of the 1981 to 85 5-year plan. One change in the direct control mechanisms of the planning process was the elevation of efficiency measures, including cost-profit considerations, to a level of primary importance as plan indices. As of 1983, efficiency measures displaced industrial goods or gross production as the primary consideration. Gross production remained an important consideration in planning. However, this change employed a cautious upgrading of the profit motive. To serve as indirect controls on the functioning of the economy, the plan introduced a series of price increases in the producing sector, first for raw materials, actually beginning as early as 1976, and subsequently for semi-finished and finished goods as well. So beginning in 1984, a payroll tax in the form of employer contributions to social funds was levied in the industrial sector to encourage efficient use of labour. So again, you're seeing that slide back towards capitalism even there under, which is, it's sad to see, but we do need to critique it, and we do need to be aware of it as well. It's very, very important.
Could you send me that article, actually?
Yeah, I've put it in the little chat there. I'll send it to you on
send me on Twitter, because I'm not on the chat.
Yeah, because we're going to be, and probably we're we've had a few drinks, probably going to forget about this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you're going to check your chat tomorrow, and there's going to be like a link to power links for getting the internet through your electricity and and analysis.
The magical wondrous technology that actually lets me connect to the internet. Bloody hell!
Imagine, and an economic analysis of the GDR. So there's
very serious stuff coming.
So that's a nail.
Again, always serious, never joke.
Never ever
joking is counter-revolutionary.
We're very, very serious on this channel here. Fucking revisionists. Onwards to
joking is revisionist.
I'd say Lenin had a fairly good sense of humor. He coined anarcho, what did he call it? Anarcho-trendists.
I love the bit when you read Lenin, you get to the last half of it, and it's just shitting on Kautsky all the way through. It's just like brilliant. We've hit that bit now.
Oh, he just fucking burns him.
Ruins. He would be great on Twitter. He would be class.
Oh, he'd be such a prick. He'd definitely either I would have blocked him or he would have blocked me on Twitter.
Everyone would have blocked him by now, but we'd all love him as well. We'd all click the occasional few tweets, Yeah, he would be K-Lox. Yeah, I love K-Lox.
I actually love.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I love him though, but yeah,
just shut the fuck
very
up,
intelligent comrade. Yeah, no China discourse. I hope there was none in the chat tonight. I swear to God.
Oh, we didn't. Which is good. We didn't.
Well, there was that little bit where I said "Long live Xi Jinping."
So let's talk about China. Let's sit down there, comrades. That's
it now.
Get the fish and the mangoes
the
out.
Next stream. We need more pints.
Point stream. Brilliant. Now, come here to me. Before we go completely off the tracks, have we gotten through all of our questions have we done everything that we intended on doing for the stream? Were there any other questions? Let me see.
I believe so, yeah. I mean, I would have liked to have fleshed out a few things here and there, obviously. Yeah. There's resources out there.
Yeah.
My channel hopefully will cover them a little bit more in detail. If
Definitely.
You want some more immediate stuff, let me know. And again, I'm happy to provide anything. So I think we've pretty much covered everything, and we've established that the GDR was based as fuck. And it was the #1 socialist state ever. and we should uphold it.
Fucking yes, I definitely agree that it's definitely up there.
Police state.
Gay police state's amazing. Absolutely love it. Now, fantastic. Thank you very much, comrade. Sydney Rica just asks, "Are you drinking alcohol?" Oh boy, are we drinking alcohol?
Boy.
Yes, we fucking are. Sydney Rica, yes, we are.
Yeah, my first condition for coming on the stream is that we're fucking
Are we getting fucked up?
I'm not doing this shit sober.
You couldn't pay me.
Jesus Christ.
No, sure, look, it's a Friday night. What else would you be doing, sure? What else would you be doing but getting drunk and talking about communism?
Exactly, come on. I mean, I should be in the pub right now talking the same shit to my mates, but it's fine. I'm happy to come on the stream.
This is basically the pub. This is my channel.
This is the virtual pub. We're all sat in the beer garden right now. We're all supping the pints together.
Oh Christ, I'm gonna have to change the name.
We're all shivering because it's a little bit cold.
Commie pub. Yeah.
Commie pub, yes. We need more commie pubs in the future. I'll be happy to enter. I'll become a regular patron to the commie pub, mate.
Oh, I'm fucking looking forward to having you, mate. This is gonna be fucking great. Yeah, we're gonna have to make this happen. Listen, come here to me. This has been absolutely class. I'm just seeing, were there any other questions that we didn't address before we wrap things up? Because I am conscious that I am over time, and my wife is going to be upset that we're.
Oh yeah, sorry. I don't want to get in trouble, but I'm also happy to answer any questions as well. I sit outside now, sofa.
Sleeping on the couch tonight. Okay, no, come here to me. We won't drag this out anymore. We've already been going for it's nearly 4 hours at this stage, so I'm not going to.
Fucking hell, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, because I might like invite questions from people in the chat, and then they'll actually give us loads of questions, and then we'll have about fucking 20 questions to get through. And
you see, though, I'm too pissed to give a principled take now. It's just going to be GDR good. Shut up. Simple as that.
And I'm like, yeah, GDR good until 1981, and then things got ropey.
Yeah, but we don't talk about after 1981.
We don't discuss that.
It's problematic. No, we focus on the golden years. It's fine.
Beautiful. Come here to me, comrade. Let's go ahead. Let's wrap this up. Where can people find you? Do you have any works, any upcoming work that you want to plug? Let people know about. Now's your chance to sell it all.
Wow, that's a bit capitalist of your comrade. That's a bit capitalist road rocky there.
I tell you what, sell the YCL.
Sell things.
Sell the CPB. You stay on brand.
On brand, comrades. So yeah, I'm happy to simp for myself first, and then I'll simp my organisation. So,
please.
Obviously, you can find me at the YouTube channel. It's in the link below. Socialist Swann. I'm talking about the GDR and also a little bit of other history as well. I mentioned earlier that I talked about the Fenians in Ireland. I'm looking at a little bit of Yorkshire local history as well, where the Battle of Holbeck Moor will be coming up soon, where the people of Leeds gave Oswald Mosley a bloody nose, gave him a scar under his eye that he never fucking forgot, the bastard. So I'm going to be looking at a bit more history there. The next video about the GDR is actually going to be about sex and sexuality and racial equality as well. So be looking out for that when it does come up. And then I'm going to be doing a video purposely about the wall as well. So those are my main upcoming projects. You can follow me on Twitter at Tired Communist. You're welcome to see my shit takes there. Find out my pub ventures and see how I sing James Connolly when it comes to the pub. I found a nice little local Irish pub. It was fucking class.
I saw the picture. That's fucking dead.
Oh, it was good. Yeah. So yeah, you can follow me there. In terms of what you should be doing as communists yourselves in the chat, join your local organisation, join your Communist Party or your Young Communist League, because you are nothing on your own. I'm sorry. If you're sat there in your fucking armchair reading Marx, you might know Capital. You might know Capital back to front, fucking in Russian, backwards in Klingon. It doesn't matter. If you're not out there agitating for your class, in your Communist Party and in your trade union, you are nothing to our movement. I'm sorry. So get in touch with your local Communist Party today. It will change your life, and you'll learn every day as well. Yeah. You know, we're all learning. So whether that's the YCL, the Young Communist League, or the Communist Party of Britain, or the Connolly Youth Movement in Ireland, and the Communist Party of Ireland, get in touch, and it will change your life, comrades. So please do that. Solidarity forever. Fucking red salute, boys.
Fucking red salute, boys. Thank you so much, comrades. You'll find a link to our comrade Socialist Swann's YouTube channel.
Also, simp for my Patreon.
I was going to say that. I was going to get there. Comrades, I will say it.
I forgot to plug that one.
We have to do it. I hate saying that. We are fucking poor. We don't have any fucking money, so yeah, if you can.
See, we don't have the universal right to employment just yet. So,
not yet.
We have to make do for now.
Well, when we're fucking done with the world, then I'm sure that'll be a given. But for now, unfortunately, comrades, we need to participate in capitalism. So if you have a few quid, $1 or $2 or pounds or euros or whatever it might be, it might not seem like a lot. €1, pound, dollar, whatever it might be, might not seem like a lot to you per month or whatever. You won't even notice it disappearing out of your bank account, but it makes a big fucking difference to us. So
it really goes a long way. Thank you so much, everybody.
Fucking way. So if you wouldn't mind, you can find a link in the description box below to our comrade Socialist Swann's Patreon, and also to mine if you're feeling so inclined as well. So thank you very much.
Definitely sub-support because he's a fucking class lad.
Stop.
You know that.
We just stop.
No, he's a good lad. He's done so much for the Marxist-Leninist community on YouTube.
I can't fucking
toss him a couple of quid. It might just be a packet of crisps for you, or a coffee.
I could do with that.
But he loves it. You know, I mean, the
I've
packet
got
of crisps is nice, but you know what? Well, this is why we need to simp for Paul en masse. So
give me a packet of crisps
at least, please.
Just a quid.
Give him the crisps. You see, you've got the pints, but you don't have the crisps to help wash it down. So
well, look,
look after the lad.
Could you imagine like the evolution of these streams? Like right now, I'm on like the cheapest little vodka, little for anyone who's outside of.
You're gonna be on the Beluga next. Whatever it's called.
I'm just gonna like slowly level up through the different vodkas, so like the fanciest vodkas you can find. As the Patreon grows.
Winter Palace next.
It's the next logical step, mate. Next logical step. Come here, I'll do a little shout out.
Oh, it's the worst anyway. Yeah.
I'll do a little shout out to the people in the chat here before we finish up. So thank you very much everybody in the chat for sticking around. Really appreciate it. We'll see a few people here. I'll say hello. Thank you very much, Will DeMarco.
Can I give a quick shout out?
Please, yeah.
Can I just give a quick shout out to the Mod Union? Thank you for protecting our front lines. You're at the forefront of the class struggle against the revisionists and the capitalist roaders in the comments, blocking the fascists. You are the anti-fascist protection wall of the Paul Moran stream. So fucking red salute to you boys. Sort them out. If you see a dickhead, block him, gulag for 300 seconds. So well done to you. And I hope you kept up the struggle whilst I were gone. And I'll be back in your ranks again on Wednesday. So fucking good on you, lads.
Fucking beautiful. Absolutely. Thank you very much, comrade. And I'll say thank you very much to TOS, to Jessidiah, that Honocharists, Arvid Tawu, Bermans Lee, Sydney Rika, Cosmic Breads, Papi Chulo. Who else have we got here hiding up above? Ozel Tsitsula. I can never pronounce that name. SZTUL.
Close enough. Be right. Be grand.
The Schlendrian. 2 points. Be grand. More this vodka to be grand. The Partisan. Who I think is gone. And of course, fuck you.
Good on you, Partisan. Fucking subscribe to him. He's a good lad.
It's a Partisan's class, yeah. And of course, fuck you, which is just a hilarious name. And who else we got? Tetl or and Leon Bar. Tetkl, THETKL.R, and then Leon Bar, LAUNEBA.
Close enough.
That's our comrade from the GDR who actually had the experience.
Absolute legend. Red salute to you, comrade.
Red salute.
I hope the stream was alright for you.
And I see SpongeBob SquarePants in there as well. Comrade SpongeBob.
Absolute king.
I'm ready.
It's good to have support from the Socialist Republic of the Pineapple at the bottom of the sea.
Bikini Bottom, yeah, comrades. Comrades.
Marxism, socialism with bikini bottom characteristics.
Yeah, the Socialist Republic of Bikini Bottom. Yeah, love to see it. Alexander Pitek, Arvid, Jamie Rowe, Googly Moogly. Comrades, thank you so much. Listen, comrades, enjoy your weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. We'll be back next Wednesday, talk with Tumblestein about mental health and capitalism. Next Friday, Mexi, if she's feeling better, will be coming on to talk.
Legends.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about sort of sectarianism and anti-sectarianism on the left and how we can sort of approach these kinds of questions. And community comrades, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for sticking around. And enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Cheers, comrades. Solidarity, love, and all that good stuff.
Red salute, everybody. Cheers.
Red salute.